I want to welcome you all here to the Navigate Conference of 2022. Let's round up our networking. If you are still in conversations, let's get ready to start the program now. And once again, I welcome everyone to this event. It's good to see you, and we are happy you are here to participate in this conference. It's the first edition of this conference, and we'll be happy to hear from great people and important people that are here in our midst today. We have representatives from the city, we have representatives from Boise State, and all amazing people all over the world are here today. And just to let everyone know, we have a restroom in case you are pressed. We have restroom. If you want to access one, you can go through the back door to the right, then take a right and a left. So you'll be at the restroom. Just keep it in mind, right, left. Okay? Yeah. So also I will be introducing someone here, very important, who is the co-vener of this event, and he had put a lot of effort and great work to make sure we are all gathered here today. He's been participating in youth development all over the world. He has great experiences doing that in Africa, specifically East Africa, West Africa, and here in Idaho, he's been also involved in active development of youth and also making sure that everyone knows a career path and a development plan towards achieving a greater goal and success as a young adult or individual at large. So please help me welcome PM.
Right, I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to Navigate Conference 2022. My name is Michael Ekpenkhio. I'm the convener of this conference. My family and I moved to Boise precisely July 2019 to work as a religious worker. Not knowing anyone, not knowing anybody, we had to navigate, our way through settling in, just by ourselves. And one of the things we experienced too was that the city the people we met were not that welcoming, but we made up our mind that we are going to navigate through. And we also made up our mind that part of the things we'll be doing is that we'll help others that are coming in to settle in and to feel comfortable and to want to stay in Boise. Now, having worked as a missionary across other countries and continents, I came to the conclusion that that every city has its own way of thinking, has their own dynamics, and culture, coupled with how things work in that city. Which make me also accept the fact that the first and the most vital tool you need to navigate a new city is to access information. I mean the right information. When people don't gain access to the right information, their progress may be delayed and they'll begin to make costly mistakes. So to me, nothing is more valuable than insight in the journey of life. Someone said, which I agree with, if you leave your life to chance, then you don't have a chance. So nothing empowers like information. Someone also said, to be informed is to be transformed, and to be uninformed is to be deformed. And so if you don't want to be deformed, you get information. Information is both the gateway to your advancement and the cure for all frustration while navigating a new city. Friends, you can never fail with facts. You can never fail with facts. So I consider information as any bit of news that influences your action. Every bit of news that influences your action, you know. So your speed of progress in a new environment is determined by the quality of information at your disposal. As far as you can see determines how far you can go. Talking about the importance of information, I told you my family and I moved in July 2019 as a religious worker. And we've been on, you know, immigration system trying to, you know, navigate through and move up, you know. And the first application we made, you know, was just there because of COVID. There was delay and all that for over 2 years. Until somebody told us and said, no, you can put in the next step together, concurrently with the first one. And we never knew. We're hanging there for over 2 years. And we did that, and as they often say, the rest is history today. You know, so that's the power of information. So I want to encourage you, don't stop learning, because we live in a changing world. So you have to keep pace with the current knowledge. Nobody is responsible for where you are. Nobody. Nobody. So don't play the victim. Nobody's responsible for where you are but you. So readers are leaders. No matter your calling, your profession, your career, without relevant information, you don't have a future. You don't have a future. Someone said, common sense, it at its best, will produce common results. So if you want to produce outstanding results, access information. Someone also said that the largest room in the world is the room of improvement. Is a room of improvement. So the more you know, the better you become in life. The more you know, the better you become. So, did you recently relocated, trying to settle in, or you want to avoid common mistake in a new city? You want to also network, mingle with people of like minds, or you need support, information on career and business opportunities, or you are in need of some immigration support, or do you have any question you need to answer, you need answers to? You are certainly in the right place. You are certainly in the right place, and our facilitators are here to help you this afternoon. So among those that will be speaking today, we have Kate Nansen, who is the Director of Community Partnership in the city of Boise. Kate, you're welcome. We also have Officer Carr. Am I right? Did I call it well? No. Okay. All right. So the K is silent. Yes. All right. All right. No. Yeah. Of the city of Boise Police, with experience in working with several community. I think she came with her colleague, so she will introduce him to us. We also have our attorney in the house today, Osasi Yamo. You are welcome. She came all the way from Florida, you know. And we also have representative of the Boise State University, Life Lunga, here also. She's going to tell us about the opportunities in Boise State University. Realize that there are a lot of opportunities there, a whole lot of opportunity that has to do with funding, scholarship, and a lot of people don't know. There are a lot of young people, even in the US, that are not even aware that there are a lot of opportunity here. And so we hope to help them with the right information this afternoon. Then also among those that you can walk up to get help today is also my lovely wife, Bola. At least for the years we've worked together, we have rubbed on each other, and I'm sure she has enough experience to share. All right, so please sit tight this afternoon and take advantage of this conference. And once again, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, PM. That's a lovely speech. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, moving down on the order of events today, I would like to introduce our next speaker in the house. She's the Director of Community Partnership at the Office of the Mayor, City of Boise, and she has worked on different projects to bring opportunities to people and prosperity to communities as well, through unique methodology program that removes systemic barriers for people that they have opportunity to thrive. And she also has a master's degree at the University of Idaho. Please welcome Kate Nelson.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. It's really wonderful to be here. As I was introduced, my name is Kate Nelson. I am here today on behalf of Mayor McLean, the first elected female mayor here in Boise. And I am one of 3 directors in the mayor's office. As the director of community partnerships, one of my roles is to, and Michael, you teed this up perfectly for me. I was like, yes, he can just continue to talk about the importance of like information and partnership. That is what my job is all about. So on behalf of the mayor, I am here to share information with you, community members, and also to receive information from you so that we know how to best to serve all of our residents. And so I have a very unfortunately limited time today, so I'm gonna pick some of the most important things that I want to touch on, but I will also leave my business cards on the back table, and I want you to know that you are welcome to email me, to call me, and I am here on your behalf and on the mayor's behalf. So I want to start off by saying thank you for taking the time to be here today. And the city of Boise really and deeply values the contributions that folks bring and continue to provide our community that have arrived as immigrants and refugees. We know that there are a multitude of strengths and benefits that really contribute to both our economy, the success of our community, the success of our businesses, the success of our families and kids, all because of the talent and diversity of perspective and experience that is brought to us through folks that have immigrated here to Idaho and to Boise. And before I start, I want to be sure to hit some points that are most relevant to you all. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Please raise your hand if you have lived in Boise for 2 years or less. All right, 2 years or less. Okay. And how many of you are actively seeking a degree in higher education? All right, perfect. And keep your hand up if it's post-bachelor's degree. All right. Well, congrats. That is no easy accomplishment to be at this juncture. So that speaks a lot of your drive and dedication and talent. So that's super exciting that you're here in Boise. And one of my jobs is to ensure that you stay in Boise and that we retain your talent. So to that end, I would love to talk about Boise City as an employer. So as you likely know, the city of Boise has about 13 different departments that range from like parks and rec to making sure that our water is clean and public works. Of course, our police department, our libraries, and really a very expansive array of things that we execute every single day, every hour of the day to ensure that Boise is like running operationally. And then there are positions such as mine that is looking strategically about how we are identifying ourselves as the city of Boise. What's our personality? What are our values? What do we hold dear? How do we maintain the quality of life here given the changes that we're experiencing here as a city and we're experiencing as a country and we're experiencing across the world? I really appreciate the points of there being like having information is so important. and being able to figure out what, to wade through all the information and find the facts that are needed is equally important. And I would say that every single day, my job entails getting to the heart of the matter and understanding large social issues and addressing those. And so again, I just want to extend an invitation for each of you. I can't do it without you. I need your input, I need your perspective, and without it, it's just a few people that are making our best guess at what the concerns within the community are and what are the creative ideas that we can all coalesce around to advance. So as an employer in the city of Boise, we are looking for talent right now and encourage you to continue or to start thinking of City of Boise as an employer. If you have any questions about how to connect with the City of Boise, again, please reach out to me, and my job is to be the liaison to direct you to the right person, either within the City of Boise or also within the community. Prior to joining the city, I was involved in a nonprofit for about 10 years, where a lot of my work was focused on ending poverty and then working with individuals that have arrived in Boise either as refugees or as immigrants. And so I was focused on doing that through entrepreneurship, removing barriers so that people could utilize their talent and interests to become business owners here in Boise. Also mentoring programs, so mentoring is very near and dear to my heart. I know I wouldn't be in my position without the mentorship of many people in my life. And I also want to emphasize that in mentorship, I think there's so much reciprocal learning that is extremely important. And I know that you have a lot to offer in a mentorship relationship. And so even if there are not specific job opportunities at this point in time at the City of Boise, I would encourage you to find a leader and a mentor within the city, and then also take the opportunity to share your perspective and your talents. Because again, we really, at this point in time as a community, we need those relationships more than ever. After 2 years of the pandemic, we're missing that face-to-face contact. So many things have changed, and as we are emerging from this, we're recalibrating and trying to figure out how to connect again. And if you do not have that mentoring relationship, please consider investing the time in finding one that is going to support you and one that is also going to listen to you and learn from you as well. The City of Boise is a welcoming city, and I mean that in a very official sense. Welcoming America is a nationwide initiative that was started about a decade ago, and the City of Boise was one of the first to step up and say, yes, we see ourselves as a welcoming city for all. That is a core principle of how we define ourselves, and we want to go through the accreditation process to have the official flag, so to speak, to say that we are a welcoming city. So in 2019, we went through that certification process. We were one of the first cities to do so. Right now, we are going through that recertification process, and it is rigorous. It is not something that's just like a stamp to say, hey, Boise, good job, you're interested in being a welcoming city, congratulations. No, we have to demonstrate as a municipal government exactly what we are doing to be welcoming. And so as one of the outcomes that has occurred is the creation of the first ever language access coordinator at the City of Boise. I'm very excited about that. That individual just started last week, and yeah, super exciting. Officer NAR's position is actually one of those investments as well. So there are liaisons that are specifically responsible for being the point of contact within our police department for populations. And so Officer Nar, and I'm not going to touch on her position too much since she will speak shortly, is the official refugee liaison within our Boise Police Department. And so these types of positions are, we recognize as a city, absolutely critical for us to make in order to provide equity of services, to provide a safe community, and to make sure that there is open government from mayor's office to every single resident here. And so, again, as we progress through this audit and recertification process with Welcoming America, we are going to be evaluated on what other things that we need to do to truly be a welcoming city. So that's another opportunity for your input where you see shortcomings in that. We want to hear from you so we can assess where we need to be better to make this a welcoming city. Unfortunately, I'm looking at the time and I need to be at another event in 10 minutes, so I'm really sorry to cut this short, but I really value the opportunity to be in front of you. And before I hand off the mic, I would love to answer any questions that you have either about my position or about the city of Boise. Yes. Well, there are so many. I mean, we are recruiting on the police force. We are recruiting for software engineers. We are recruiting for graphic designers. So there is a very, very broad set of skills and positions that are open from the higher, more experienced, like leadership level to entry level. And then I neglected to also say that internships, like the city of Boise is very open to internships. We place an emphasis on paying our interns and fellows to the extent that's possible through budget. So if you are interested in exploring what working within the city might look like, and especially if you're a student at the same time, that's a very flexible option that that can be also shaped by you. So let's say you don't see anything on our current list of job openings and don't know exactly how your field may be relevant. I would encourage you to reach out to me and say, hey, this is my resume, this is what I'm studying right now. Do you see any spot for me in the city? And what I do in those instances is, if I either might plug you in directly with a respective director of that department, or have a conversation with you to help get to a clear next direction for you. Okay. Any more questions? All right. Well, it was great to be in the room with all of you, and it looks like you have a fantastic day in front of you. Should I just hand it off to Officer Nar? I'll let you introduce her. I'll let you introduce. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. And that was very insightful and so much information. And if you also would like to follow up with her, she'll be leaving our card, and you can also grab that, and our contact will be on that as well, as she has mentioned. And moving down, I will be introducing my next speaker. And I would just like to read a few introductions before she comes on stage. I think she's really excited to come on here, and that's great. That's what we like to see. Yeah, my next speaker, she has been with the Boise Police Department since 2014, and she now serves in the Community Outreach Division as a refugee liaison in the Neighborhood Contact Officers Unit, and she also had a Bachelor's of Arts in Criminal Justice at Boise State University. And please welcome Jessica Nar, Officer Jessica Nar.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here today and to be speaking with you all. So I'm Officer Jessica Narr. I am the current Refugee Liaison Officer for the Boise Police Department. I brought with me one of my colleagues. I'm going to make you come up just for a minute so they can all see you. But I will be transitioning out of this position into our training division here near the end of the summer, and Officer Travis Buffy will be the new Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I just wanted to make sure everybody could see you. They'll be seeing more of your face in our community. So Travis will be the fourth person to hold this position. We've had this position in our police department for a little over 15 years. So Boise's been a major resettlement city for a really long time. And for a long time ago, we decided that we needed to make this position official. We had one of our officers in my current unit really committed to communicating with people who had newly arrived as refugees and working with other stakeholders to really help make them really successful in our community and avoid contact with the police, especially when people don't need to be having contact with the police. But that can be hard when you're new to this country. And one of the things that I like to always say, because I think it's really relevant and that I never thought of myself before I took this position, and it's about law. And law is a reflection of the culture of the community or country that it's in. And we don't think of it when you're born in America and you live here, or even just in Idaho, until people coming from other states and they're like, well, why do you guys have this law but California doesn't? Or we have laws like this in this state. And it's because it's a reflection of the culture of that community and that society. So that can be really hard if the culture of your community you're coming from is very different and has different values, and maybe it's different how much the government's involved in certain types of conflicts. So that's a big part of the refugee liaison position, is actually education in the community. So I go out in the community just like today, and we talk about US culture and laws, about when you interact with police, and about how to navigate those interactions so that you have that best foot forward to being successful and then not having any further contact with the criminal justice system. But the other flip side of that is that I also teach our officers. So we do a cultural diversity class that all officers in the state of Idaho get. We also have added in a refugee awareness class that includes language access training. So Detective Sonnenberg, who started this position, also started an interpreter program for interpreters that contract with the city of Boise. So we have interpreters who live in Boise that are accessible for us to use in our investigations and contacts with victims and suspects in the city. We also have a Language Line Solutions we use as a telephonic interpretation resource as well, because sometimes it's better for you to not have that person living in the city that might be interpreting for you. There's some strict code of ethics with interpretation, which many of you who are bilingual or multilingual know, but not everybody feels comfortable with that if they think somebody might violate that. So we have those resources. We knew that was really important. So that's part of the training we do for officers. We also do implicit bias training. We do human rights training, as well as community policing training, which is really the core of like what my position is and my unit is how can we engage with our communities to strengthen our communities through our relationships and actually lessen the need for enforcement from our law enforcement officers and our police officers. So that's a big part of like the heart of my position. And I feel really strongly that like about the relationships that are so important to make a position like mine really possible. And not just with those who are newly arrived into the country, but also to all those stakeholders, all those who support refugee resettlement, all those who support immigrants, all of those who are supporting people who are making Boise their home now. Because oftentimes situations will come to me and we don't need to take enforcement action. The police don't need to be involved, but nobody else knew who to call. And there was some conflict there, but it didn't rise to the level of there actually being like enforcement action needs to be taken. But if we leave it alone, it'll get there. So people call me, they're like, hey, we don't know what to do, but like this isn't going well. Or officers call me and say, Jessica, we went to this house, there's a conflict, but like we can't do anything, but like this family needs help with employment, with housing, with parenting, with fill in the blank. There's some kind of root cause that's causing conflict in that home that's gonna continue to escalate if somebody doesn't come into that. So this is where I'll go out and we kind of work together with families and whatever they're comfortable with, bringing in other stakeholders to have more creative solutions to problems to prevent them from escalating to have the need of law enforcement involvement. Because that's what we really want. Like I tell everybody when they newly arrive here, I'm like, if you have hate in your heart and you want to hurt people and victimize people, I'm like, we can deal with that as police. But if you're a good person and just don't understand the situation you find yourself in, I don't want you making mistakes that are going to put you on a different trajectory that's away from your success. So I want to kind of talk about that a little bit. I don't have very much time, but I will leave a few of my cards. I actually have an order in for more, so I don't have a lot. My cell phone number is on there, though. So I just want to make sure, I'll make sure at least one gets left so that you guys can't take all of them, so that anybody can just at least write my cell phone number down. Because I always tell everybody in our community, if you ever have questions, even hypotheticals, maybe it's not about something you've done, but maybe it's a hypothetical you want to run by me and be like, let's say this happened, what should you do? I can't give you legal advice, but I can kind of advise like how things function, right? And how things work. And also, if you ever have an interaction with police and you feel like you weren't treated fairly, I want you to reach out to me. We want to be held accountable. I want officers to be held accountable just as much as anybody else in our community, because when officers behave poorly, that reflects back on all of us officers. And we don't want that any more than members of our community do. But oftentimes, things like that start with little behaviors and then slowly over a long period of time develop into unethical behavior. But we need people to speak up when those little things happen so we can address it before it's something really egregious and really bad. But when we're dealing with police and interacting with police, there's some key things that I think are really important pretty much wherever you are, but I'm going to talk basically about Boise. So there might be some small differences for other communities, but there's some big basics that should hold true most places in the US. So when you have an interaction with a law enforcement officer, one of the first things is just do what they're telling you to do. So there's some difference of like a consensual contact, and that's just us stopping just to see what you're doing and talk to you, and you're free to leave at any point in time. But if I have a lawful reason, which would mean I have some kind of investigative purpose for what I'm doing, and I have reason to control your movements, that you can't just walk away from me. If I tell you what to do as a law enforcement officer, the best thing for everyone involved is just to do what I say initially. Even if that's just, hey, will you sit down and talk to me? You don't have to talk with me, but you can't leave. So if you just at least stop, and maybe you really want to know, like, why are you telling me to do this? What's going on? Like, am I in trouble? Take a deep breath. I tell the same thing to my officers. Take a deep breath. Explain clearly why you want somebody to stop. Hey, you just walked across the road, you didn't use a crosswalk, it's unsafe, it's also illegal, I want to talk to you about it. Okay, now you're not wondering, why is this person contacting me? I feel the same way when my sergeant, my boss, sends me a text message, hey Jess, come to my office. And I'm like, am I in trouble? Is this like, can we add that in there, right? So it's human nature to feel that way, but sometimes if we can all stay calm, we can quickly resolve whatever the situation is, right? So what we do is inherently dangerous, because I don't know if you're a really great, nice person or if you're a really bad person. Contrary to what people think, you really can't just tell from looking at people. Somebody might look really big and tough and mean, and they might be really, really nice. And somebody might look like they're kind of a wuss, and they could like whoop your butt, right? So you can't really just tell by how people look what's in their heart. So what we do is, because it's very different, my husband's in the military. Like, when he's deployed, he knows who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. It's a lot more simple in the military than it is for police, because I might deal with somebody who needs help with their neighbor who's trimmed their bushes and they weren't supposed to, and then I might go deal with somebody who was like hurt in a really violent fight with somebody, like within a few minutes of each other. Something very minor to something very serious, then something middle, something minor, something serious again. But I don't know. It could be all minor things all day, and then suddenly really serious. So I don't say that to make any excuses, just to give you a little idea of like what's going on in a cop's mind, right? Because I want to go home to my family at the end of the day, but I also want to protect my community from bad people with bad intentions. So I'm not going to go hide in my cop car. I'm going to go out and I'm going to contact people and I'm going to look for things that are going on that shouldn't be happening in my city to prevent that from happening. So when I give somebody a command and I have a lawful reason to do so, I expect them to obey my command. Because as soon as I do that, I'm gauging how compliant they are. So if I ask you, hey, sit down, and you sit down, I'm like, okay. And then we start talking, and based on how much you answer my questions or how much you tell me, like, obey what I'm asking you to do, now I'm kind of gauging what kind of person you are. And it's all based on this actual interaction with you. But if I ask you to sit down and you're like, yeah, no, and you start backing away slowly, and I'm like, okay, this person's probably going to take off running, right? But I'm usually going to probably sit you down, because even if you say you're compliant in the beginning, why would I want you to sit down versus just stand here and talk to me? It's a lot easier to run away when you're standing here than it is when you're sitting down, right? So really, officers do a lot of things like that to put you in a position of disadvantage as like the public, and us in a position of advantage. But really, the whole goal of that is to keep all of us safe. Because if we get in a fight, yeah, I might hurt you, but I'll probably get hurt too, especially the longer that fight is. So we don't want that. We want compliance so we can figure out what's going on, and oftentimes it's not as serious as you might think. Something that I think is very different about police in the US sometimes is like, we might be contacting you and not because you're in trouble. We have a community caretaking function as well. So there's certain things that we have to do. We have to just make sure people are okay, and we kind of get, I think a lot of people have heard about this the last several years. Police are sometimes put in situations that maybe police shouldn't be in, but because we're part of the government and nobody else wants to do it, we end up in situations that maybe police aren't the perfect fit for, but we're there as a community caretaking function. So just because we're involved doesn't necessarily mean someone's in trouble. And sometimes we just have to talk to everybody who's involved to make sure we have the full story. Like, you ever talk to somebody, one of your friends, and they had a fight with another friend of yours, and you hear their whole story, and you're like, yeah, that was messed up. Like, yeah, Travis is totally out of line. And then you go talk to Travis, and then you go talk to Travis, and you hear this other side of the story, and you're like, wait a minute. Maybe it was Jess who was out of line, but I totally believed her. Until you hear both sides of the story, you don't really understand what happened. And maybe both of them are telling you pretty much the same story, but because of the perspective they have, you're like, okay, the truth's somewhere in the middle here, right? So one of the biggest things that I think can hurt people who don't trust the police when it comes to our investigations is not wanting to talk with us at all. You don't have to. I'm not giving you advice. I'm just saying when we were able to talk with everyone involved, we're better able to see the full picture and actually understand what did happen and what didn't happen. So sometimes people are like, nope, I don't want to talk to the police at all. So we're like, okay, you don't have to. But if I have to make a decision because something happened where there has to be a decision made whether to arrest somebody or not, and I only get one side of the story, I have to make a decision based on the one side of the story. Because I've often had people come back and talk with me, and I have to add it to the original police report, and I'm like, if you'd only told the officer that then, like, this completely changes the whole case. But because you didn't want to talk to that officer, they didn't know that, so they can't take action on information they don't have. So just obeying commands officers give, and I understand every officer is different. Like, we do things very differently based on our personalities. There's a range of what we can do depending on the situation, but our personalities can make things very different on how we handle situations. I know some that are very dry, just their personalities. So even though they're really nice, they come across as rude a lot just because of the way they speak. They're very direct. There's no emotion. They're not worried about your feelings. They're just like, I'm just doing my job. And you have other ones that are so nice, you'll be going to jail apologizing to them. And like all the time, like one of our DUI officers has had people come back and thank him and like publicly thank him for like arresting them. I get it, because it changed the trajectory of their life, but also the way he treated them made them just like really care about this person who was basically like catching them doing something wrong and helped them go to court and get punished for their bad behavior. But because of how he handled it, because of his personality, right? So you have this whole spectrum of personalities that can impact how we do our jobs and how those interactions with you feel. But I will say, we'll always tell you why we're contacting you, but maybe not right in the beginning, right? And that can kind of depend on the situation. Like, you'll have a chance to find out what's happening, but it's better to just take a deep breath, obey our commands, and then we'll figure out what's going on. Oftentimes, the quicker somebody is compliant with us, the faster we can like resolve the situation. And if you're not involved and you didn't do anything wrong, we can just get you out of there, and then you don't have to hang out with us. Because I'll be serious, I'm a cop and I don't want to hang out with cops when I'm not working, right? I'm driving my car and I see a cop behind me, I'm like, how fast am I? Okay, good, right? That's human nature. We all feel that way, even other officers. So don't worry about not being comfortable being around police officers or being worried when they come to your house. No one wants the cops at their house. But we might not be there for the reasons you think, so give us a chance to interact with you in a safe way. And I just really want to, I don't have a lot of time, so I don't want to take up too much time here, but I really want to make sure that if you ever feel like you're treated unfairly, you can reach out. I will help you, I can direct you to any ways of that process here. I've had people contact me that live other places, and I've helped connect them with the correct ways to do that process in their cities. But there's different things that you can do to make sure that we're held accountable. But on the flip side of that is if you have really good interactions with officers, like, we want to hear about those too. Because our bosses aren't following us around. Yeah, we have body cameras and we record everything we do, but our bosses often don't know about the good things we do and when we're doing good work and we're interacting well with our community unless we hear it. And we hear a lot more of the negative stuff than we do the good stuff. But I will say, like, I feel like we're pretty fortunate in Boise. Can you guys guess what the #1 complaint our police officers get in Boise? What do you guys think? What do people complain about police officers for? Loud music? What do you think? What do people think when they talk about their police officers? What do they do poorly? Driving, okay. So, with my husband on that one. But maybe like excessive use of force and how they're dealing with the public, right? Like, those are some things we hear. The #1 complaint, and this has been a long-standing tradition for us, is because it beats out everything else, because usually over the course of a year we have less than 5 excessive use of force complaints, and usually 1 or none are sustained, which means like that we found like, yes, the officer did use excessive force for that situation. Our #1 complaint is demeanor, which basically means that officer was rude to me. They don't like how they talk to me. And then after we investigate those, we find like actually a pretty small percentage of those, because we have either audio recording or body camera recording of all of our contacts. So the sergeant will review that, and then we find a really small percentage of those are even sustained. And then we play it for people, and they're like, oh, we didn't know you were recording it. Okay, it wasn't that bad, never mind. But we feel like that's a really good place for us to be as a police department, because if that's the biggest problem we have when we deal with our community, is just making sure we're managing how we treat people and how we talk with them when we're under stress and they're under stress. We can work with that, right? Like, so we brought in implicit bias training. I was part of creating our curriculum 5 or 6 years ago, because all those unintended biases and how they impact how we talk to people and how we deal with people and how we read a situation. And that was part of looking at our department, the complaints that we get, and how can we address those things, right? But like I said, that information is only good as the feedback we get from our communities. So it is really important. And I think it's really important for people in any community to communicate that kind of stuff to their police departments, positive and negative, right? And depending on what role you're in, whether you were a suspect or you were accused of a crime, whether you were a victim, whether your friend was a victim, those are all different perspectives of an encounter with police. But I think one of the most important things to me is like just empower our community members. Like, we work for our community. Like, this is our city. We love our city. We are here as police officers. This is more of a calling than it is just a job. Like, I make a good living doing this job, but I can make a lot more money doing a lot of other things, right? So when we sign up to be police officers, we do it because we really have a strong passion to serve our community and make a difference and feel like we can. Now, that might not always come across in your interactions with police, but know that the heart's there behind that. And that's really what drives us to this job. And I want you guys to know that you can trust your police. And if you think that you can't, then that's where we need to hear from our communities, right? If we're ever doing things that violate that trust, we need to hear about it. And that's where my role comes in. So we have several other, we call them community liaisons. Mine's a full-time position for the refugee community, but we also have a Hispanic liaison, we have an LGBTQ plus liaison, we have an NAACP liaison, and an Asian American Pacific Islander liaison as well. The idea behind community liaisons is there's a lot of communities that might not feel that police services are as accessible to them as they are to their people. Would you guys agree with that? Right? Like, well, I don't want to just call the cops. They won't even listen to me anyway. Anybody ever heard somebody say that? I have. Why are you even here? You're not going to do anything about it anyway because of fill in the blank about what makes somebody different or what makes them unique. And I'm like, well, if you don't give us a chance to, we can't. But I can understand, like, not trusting police. I come from a really rural community in southern Nevada. I'm the only cop most of my friends know. And I'm only their friend because I was their friend before I was a cop. Not that they don't like cops, they just never knew anybody was a cop. But do you know what kind of things they call and ask me? The exact same things that newly arrived refugees call me and ask me. The American, like, criminal justice system and our laws, it's confusing for everyone. There's a lot of stuff that I've had friends call me and be like, hey, Jess, so somebody just hit my car. It's like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, can you drive your car? She's like, well, no, it's like in the middle of the road. I'm like, so we're going to call 911 first, and they're going to come, and if you can move your car off the road, then do so. If not, get out of it so nobody else hits it while you're sitting in it. And I'm like, she's American. She was like 26 when this happened. Like, she wasn't like 16, but she'd never been in a car accident, so she had no idea what to do. So I think that's something else that I think is important for people to know, is that it is confusing. It can be scary, especially when you feel like my freedom's at risk because there's a police officer knocking on my door. Like, what's going to happen next? So just understand that, like, we're not out here just to find people to punish. We're just here trying to do our jobs, trying to keep our community safe and hold people accountable for their actions. And that's our job, right? And if we don't like what the laws are that police are enforcing, let's become more engaged. Let's become more civically engaged and change the things that we don't like about what laws we have, right? And that's not something I can impact as a police officer, but something we can all impact as citizens, right? By voting and being engaged. But the big takeaway, I just want you all to know that you can reach out to me, whether you're living in Boise or not. I'll leave my cards, and my cell phone number is on there. I'll make sure my cell phone number is up there for anybody who can't get one of my cards, because I don't have very many today. And then I'll tell the same thing for Officer Travis Buffy when he takes over my position, is you can always reach out to us as long as it's not an emergency. We won't always answer the phone, but we'll always get back with you. And if you ever even just have an interaction with the police or somebody else does, and they're like, I don't really understand what happened. Like, are they coming back? Were we in trouble? Like, those are questions that we can answer because we're police officers and have access to that information. We can find out what really happened and kind of clear up things. And I would much rather clear up a misunderstanding than have you carry the weight of feeling like that you were treated unfairly or you don't really understand what happened. Okay. So I like to take a few questions if you guys have some questions. I think I have a little bit of time for that. Or any scenarios or things that you're dying to ask a police officer.
So most of us are here studying currently. So what are the perspectives for someone who is studying in America now and wants to join the police force, but the person is not American?
So one of the Idaho state requirements, so it's not just Boise Police Department, but the state of Idaho, is you have to be a U.S. citizen to be a police officer. So we do have some other options for employment. We have a community service specialist. So they basically do a lot of the same work that police officers do, but they don't deal with suspects. So they don't deal with the bad guys, but they do like crime scene, like evidence collection. They take like phone reports and things like that where they don't have to interact with the public as much, but they do a lot of that investigative work that's very similar to what we do. And then we also have several other positions within our department that help support the police department. You still need to pass the same type of background check to make sure that like we can trust you with really sensitive information and that you won't misuse your like access to that kind of information. Like just because I'm a police officer, if my babysitter, like so I was just talking to her, she went on a date last night. So she's like, she was talking about her mom's like, oh, you should give Jessica his name and she'll do a background check. But I can't do that. If I don't have like an investigative reason to do a records check on somebody, I can't do that. So we need to make sure that you're trustworthy with that kind of power and access. So there are several other kind of opportunities, but if you do plan to stay in the US and want to get your citizenship, then law enforcement we would love to have just more people from a variety of experience and backgrounds in our police departments. It makes us a stronger, better police department to have people from a variety of backgrounds as police officers.
Thank you very much, Officer Na, right? Yeah, I have two questions. One, so something happened, this is just out of curiosity. I was driving and a police officer was shining a white bright light. What does that mean at my back? White bright light, like flashing?
Was it flashing or was it just like a spotlight?
I think it's on top. It's on top of the car, right? So.
Okay, so we have something called an opticon. Yeah. So it will make the lights cycle faster, the stoplights.
Yeah.
So it's not for you at all. If it's a little flashy light, like our red and blue lights, the big ones on top are different, but the little flashy light we call it an opticon. So it's a piece of equipment that makes the traffic lights cycle faster. Oh. So if we need to get somewhere faster, but we don't want to run lights and sirens, either we want to be quiet or we just need to get there faster. So if the lights, like let's say it's red, we turn that on. It takes a little bit so it's still safe for everybody driving on the road, but it makes that light turn faster than it would normally on those timers.
Okay, I see.
It's really nice.
Yeah,
I wish I had one on my personal car.
Yeah, the second question is, are there areas here in Boise that you should avoid at a specific time in the night or at any point in time just for safety reasons?
Yeah, so I would say, do you want to answer this? Basically, one of the things about Boise, honestly, is like, we really are a pretty safe city. However, people who are up in the middle of the night, who aren't at work, probably aren't doing good things. So usually just really late night, like after midnight, I would just always be more careful, just because people who are out and about after midnight, who aren't working, are usually up to no good. Right? That's why your mom made you come home before midnight when you were like in high school, right? For the same reasons. But for the size city we are, Boise actually has way less of every kind of like violent, serious crime, as a city's the same exact size as our city. So we don't have a lot of it, but we do have some. And I would just say, just like downtown, we have our 6th and Main area. Have you guys been down there? Right? The bars. So, but same thing, right? A lot of people down late at night, drinking alcohol. Are those just a bad combo sometimes? So just be safe. We usually don't have a lot of really serious things happen, but it's not just Boiseans that are there, right? It's people visiting, it's people coming in from surrounding towns and things like that. So just keep yourself safe. Just be mindful. Like, it's not good to go out and get super drunk. Where you can't pay attention to your surroundings and keep yourself out of bad situations. But I wouldn't just say offhand there's really like one part of town that I would just stay away from. We don't have a lot of like abject poverty in Boise, and that usually seems to be where a lot of that type of crime is, where it's like don't go walking there after dark. We don't really have a lot of places like that. And part of it's not because of the police, it's because of our community, because our community decided, you know what? We love our city and we take ownership in it. So if they see something wrong, like, they report it, or they'll like say something to somebody. So the community's like willingness to step in and take ownership of their own safety is really what allows us to be such a safe city. Does that help a little bit? Okay.
Thank you. So as an immigrant, if I found myself in an awkward situation, let's say I'm accused of a crime, am I entitled for a lawyer for free, or am I supposed to pay for it?
So the right to counsel, whether you're a citizen or not, is the same. So the right to having an attorney if you're accused of a crime is the same whether you're a citizen or not.
cooperative is your department in terms of the issuance of a U visa certifications for victims of crimes?
So very cooperative. The question was about U visas. So that's something that, because we don't just have refugees here, we have other types of immigrants, legal and illegal, as well. So as long as, like, our prosecutor's office is very willing to work with people in order to get them a U visa to stay here. We teach our officers about that to make sure that people don't feel like they can't report a crime for fear of us involving immigration or Department of Homeland Security and those kind of things, and that they'll have protections in place and being able to do, like, if that officer doesn't feel comfortable explaining it to somebody. And those are the kind of cases that I'll have referred to me. They're like, I know that this woman's a victim, but because she doesn't have legal status here, and this cousin does, like, he's assaulting her and she's afraid to report it. And he's like, but I can't, like, get her to talk with me. And I'm like, okay, I can go meet with her and at least make sure she understands what her rights are. That we don't care as local police. Like, we're not gonna call Department of Homeland Security and report that to anybody. So that's another piece that we talk about too. Like, there are certain things that happen, like if you're arrested for a crime, that they might check records and be able to tell, like, no, someone doesn't have legal status, but we're not gonna go out of our way to report those kind of things unless somebody's, like, really violent and dangerous to our federal partners. So that is something that we are very, because we had a really violent case a few years ago, and we actually got the victim's father here on a U visa because he was still outside of the US, and mom and the kids were here. So we were actually able to get a U visa for him to come to the US after that incident happened. So that's something they'll work very hard to make those work, as long as the victims are willing to cooperate with prosecution, so we can make those happen. Does everybody know what a U visa is? So a U visa is just a way to have, like, legal status because you're a victim of a crime, even if you didn't already. And you can correct me on this one because I'm gonna do the cop version. It's just so that you can be here legally, so you're not worried about, like, your actual, like, legal status, so that you feel comfortable to report crimes. We don't want people victimizing people just because they don't have legal status to be here. So we want them to feel safe reporting things, and if we need to issue a U visa, but you have to cooperate with the prosecutor's office in order to keep that status. So that's part of it. It's like, we'll protect you if you want to report a crime, but you have to actually, like, cooperate and provide your story and testify in order to keep that.
And who's in charge? If they needed to get that, who and which office should they contact?
So usually we'll just direct most people to, we have a place called Faces of Hope in Boise. It's a secure facility for women and children who are victims of sexual and physical abuse. So, like, it's so secure, like, I can't get in there as a police officer without security letting me in. Only our Special Victims Unit detectives have access to that building, and all those who are vetted. So that's usually the first place I'll direct people, because you don't have to involve the police to get all kinds of help from Faces of Hope. And then we have prosecutors and lawyers who work directly with Faces of Hope, as well as doctors and nurses, and counselors and victim witness coordinators. So they're the experts who can really help figure out what is the situation, what kind of help do you need, and then be that source of connection for that.
There's a question online. The person says, why had there not lots resources towards mandatory training and education for residents, since the law has so complicated in the US?
Yes, this is actually a really good question, because this came up. So Detective Sonnenberg, who started this position, she saw a lot of issues with driving and newly arrived refugees. Because it's not that hard to get a license in the US, but then as soon as you have it, you're responsible for all of the laws. And even as a police officer, I'm like, I don't think that's legal. What is the law? And I have to look it up, because there's so many laws about driving. So I think it's pretty normal for most people to not understand all of the laws, but as soon as you have it, you're responsible for every law about driving. So if you violate that law, even if you claim you didn't know it, you still could get a citation, right? So when she addressed the Idaho Transportation Department and said, hey, we need more training for newly arrived refugees before they get their license, because they want to drive, but then they don't have all the knowledge they need. But yeah, they could pass the test and the driving test, but they're not really equipped to drive safely. And they said, well, we can't change things because then it's not equitable. So we can't require one group to have more training than others. So making it mandatory probably isn't something that would happen, because then it would be mandatory for everyone, which is kind of a heavy lift and can be really restrictive on people who don't want that. So we've done something a little different here in Boise. We ran a program probably 5 years ago now, where we partnered 6 former refugees with 6 police officers. And then we did ride-alongs together. We met up and had coffee while the officer was off duty. And we talked as a group of 12 people about newly arrived refugees and police officers and our interactions, and what could we do to help make newly arrived refugees more successful. One of the things that came from that program is we've created a social integration series. So it's a 13-class catalog of classes that are free to the public for them to request. So that's in partnership with the Boise Police Department and the Idaho Office for Refugees. So I worked with Salome Wagney on this project. So we have that class catalog available that anyone in the city can be like, hey, they can reach out to Salome and say, hey, we want a class on traffic laws. And then we'll facilitate it. If we need to provide interpreters, we'll pay for them as well, and we'll come teach that class. We have them on a variety of topics. Some are things that like I'll facilitate as a police officer. Some are from other facilitators that are subject matter experts, depending on the topic. And that's something that if you want to get my email, you can email me and I'll share that class catalog with you so you can look at that. But that's something that we tried to bridge that gap from, because anybody who was, when you were first here, was there a lot of information you were getting when you first arrived to the US? So that's a lot, right? Like, there's a lot of information, and that was one of the common themes we heard is like, we don't need it all right when we get here. Some of it doesn't even make sense yet. But after we've been here a while, now we have time and space in our brains to like understand what we don't know and learn things. So this is available whether you're newly arrived or not, because a lot of programs for newly arrived refugees end at 5 years, because that's the grant funding that most of these programs run off of is capped off by that. But this is something that we can offer the community no matter how long people have been here. So we've tried to make things more accessible. We understand that it can be hard. So if we need to go to churches and talk right after church because everybody's already there, those are things that we can accommodate, evenings, weekends, things like that. So we're trying to do what we can to at least give voluntary opportunities to learn more, because I agree, it is really complicated. You want me to let him talk? Yeah. Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, actually.
I usually don't let anybody else talk, so that's why he's surprised.
She talks a lot, that's for sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to be up here. Again, my name is Travis Buffy, and I'm going to be taking over for Jess here shortly. While I was sitting here listening to everybody talk, having grown up in Boise, it reminded me of a situation that I had seen online in a social media interaction about somebody who was new to Boise that was a person of color, and they were confused on why they were always being looked at, and they were concerned that it might be because they were a person of color here in Idaho. What that made me realize was, as a kid growing up here, Boise always had a small town feel where whenever you went somewhere, to the restaurant, or BSU has a substation where you can go and play video games and go bowling. Whenever somebody would walk into a place, everybody just stops and looks like, oh, no, I don't know that guy. Somebody else comes in like, no, I don't know that guy either. And what that made me realize is we're always looking at people whenever we go somewhere, because there's always that chance that we feel that we might know somebody. So I thought it was important for me to share that if you do feel like when you're out doing business, living your lives, that you feel like you're being looked at a lot as a new person here to Boise, it's not necessarily that people are looking at you with hate in their heart, as Jess likes to say, but more like, oh, who is this person? Do I know them? Have I seen them around? So I just wanted to share that anecdote with you guys. A good wave goes a long way. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Travis, and thank you, Jess, for those informations. And we are so excited to hear all those lot of information, and I hope it has helped everyone here one way or the other. And we'll move down the line to in the order of events, and I would like to call on my next speaker, and she's the International Enrollment Counselor at the Boise State University, and she's also a graduate student. And also she has a lot of experience to share about funding for international students and those that are willing to pursue degrees in Boise State University. Please help me welcome Life Lukunga.
Thank you. Ooh, that's a different sound. As Ishe mentioned, I am Life Ilunga. I am not an Idaho native, but I've been here long enough. I migrated to Boise in 2000, so a little bit before I turned 6, and have grown up here. So I'm very familiar with the city and lots of the things that have changed over time and the opportunities that our officers are talking about and the city of Boise is talking about, and the different ways that you can be involved. So we've talked a lot about what it's like to be an immigrant and the things that might come up and things that might be different. But before all of that, you have to get here, right? Like, you have to be here to be an immigrant, right? So you have to migrate to be an immigrant. And one of the common ways that a lot of people do that is through the process of is through education, higher education specifically. So I wanted to take some time to speak about some opportunities at Boise State specifically. As many of you know, the United States has thousands of institutions, many options, many options, a little bit over 5,000 to be exact. So I wanted to talk a little bit why you might want to go to Boise State instead of the other 5,000 institutions, right? So one of the things, we've talked about Boise, but we haven't talked about Boise, right? So Boise is kind of like this metropolitan, medium-sized city in the state of Idaho, which is on sort of the west coast of the United States. So if you're familiar with like California, that's close, or like Seattle, Washington, that's close, Nevada, so that part of the United States. And then Boise is in that bottom, like western side, and it is the capital city of Idaho. So that's where we're at, right? Now, Boise State is basically in the center of Boise, and I would say that it is the best located universities, and I may be a little bit biased, but I stand by it firmly. We are located just minutes away from downtown. We are right on the river, which means that you can be on campus, you could be then on the river, and then you could go to the zoo, and then you could go downtown, and then you can go hiking, like all within 30 minutes of each other, which other institutions don't have that, right? Either you're going to have a big city where there's lots of people and you have no space to yourself, or you're gonna be in the middle of nowhere and your institution is the city, right? Like, the only reason that people are here is because they're at school. And Boise State kind of has this in-between that makes it unique and kind of provides this unique culture that other institutions do not have. So that's one thing that I would mention. In addition to location, is that Boise State is highly acclaimed in a few different areas. Boise State is distinguished as a doctoral level research institution by the Carnegie Foundation. So our institution is highly focused on research, and we have about approximately 24 research centers at our university. And coming with research, our university heavily focuses on innovation. Innovation in every area. Boise State University is ranked in the top 50 of innovation universities recognized for elevation in the top 50. So that's 50 among more than 5,000 institutions in the entire United States. That's a big deal. And we talk about it a lot because we don't want you to forget. So, so that means that every program heavily focuses on doing things differently than other institutions might have. It's not uncommon when there's old universities that have been here for a long time. They kind of have a rhythm and always do the same thing. And there's not a lot of change. And the way that it was done 50 years ago is the way that these courses are taught 60 years from now. Boise State is not that way. Because of the way our university is, and the flexibilities we have, because we are not an old institution, we're always welcoming new ideas, and diversity of thought is wealth. It's something that we encourage. The more people from different areas of expertise that have an opportunity to speak to what you're doing, the better work that you can do, right? Officer Nora was talking about how, and even the individual who spoke about the city of Boise, is that where there's diversity of thought and there's people coming from different experience, you may understand something in a little bit more nuanced way than you would have if you only had your own voice, right? If I only have computing PhD individuals that I talk to, and that is it, that's going to produce a different kind of thought process and how I see things than maybe if I had a few friends who were in the arts, and maybe if I had a few friends who were in social work and psychology, and maybe if I had a few friends who were athletes. The way I think and my approach something is going to be different, and it's actually going to produce better results. So these are the reasons why I would say Boise State over everybody else. Forget the other 5,000, they don't matter anymore. They're irrelevant, okay? Location, innovation, and diversity of thought is encouraged and welcome, right? So about Boise State specifically, we have many degree programs, including about 189 majors and minors to choose from. And I say majors and minors because Boise State not only encourages you to study the thing that you came to study, right? If I want to be a social worker, I'm not only going to take social work courses. Our advisors are very encouraging for you to study things that may not exactly fit into your program so that you have good thinking skills, that you're critical thinking and you're able to develop things outside of what other experts in your area might be able to. So you could be, for example, I am a health science individual, right? But I can take psychology classes, and I can take leadership classes, and I can take classes that may not fit into my coursework, but my advisor will help me figure out how to get credit for them, but also will make me more employable, right? Because if we all come out with the same degrees, I can be like, hey, I also did this because I went to Boise State, and we're innovative. We do that there, right? So some of the top majors of incoming freshmen include computer science, pre-business, communication, health studies, kinesiology, biology, business administration, international business and political science, and lastly, number 10 is psychology. These are probably the most common, and then our graduate programs look very similar to that, with computing PhD and computer science being the most highly applied to by international students, because there's I guess globally there's kind of this idea that if you're a computer scientist, you're going to be okay. You're going to have a job. So that's what it looks like right now. One of the cool things about going to Boise State and being a part of Boise as a city is that the city of Boise, because it is a medium-sized, large city, medium-large metropolitan city, there's a lot of small startup businesses. So if you're into something that is entrepreneurial, you want to start something with your MBA or something that you don't quite know what you want to do, and there may not be a system in place, Boise is the perfect place to do that. There's so many startup companies, so many people who are building businesses on their own and being innovative, just as a city culture. And that's something that's encouraged within the city, just as when we were talking about the city of Boise, there's something that you want to study or there's something that you want to do, They're welcome to hearing you out and how that can be implemented into our city, and that's really cool. But in addition to innovation in terms of small startups and that kind of work, we also have big companies like HP and Micron. And you might not know what Micron is, but if you're having a tablet, a phone, a computer that you're watching this on, you probably have parts that were made by Micron. They are one of the biggest companies of computer parts. So even if it says Apple, Micron. So Boise State, 2 more points, right? I'm convincing you, right? We're going there, okay. In addition, Boise State has also lots of, I would say, clubs and groups that you can be a part of, whether those things are academic groups and that specifically are intentioned for your networking and connecting with people who are interested in the same things. Those things are also available in all areas of expertise. And this also goes hand in hand with when you're building your program and your degree. Our advisors highly encourage internships and actual real-life experience in the things that you want to do, and our community is always very open to doing that. So you want to come to Boise State. You know it's the best, right? But money is a thing. Money is probably the greatest determinant of where individuals go to achieve their higher education. That's probably the biggest burden, and I would say it can sometimes even be more burdensome for those who are migrating to the United States, because there's some systems that are not accessible to you in the same way. So I wanted to first talk about undergraduate funding. All undergraduate students are automatically reviewed for 2 specific scholarships by the state of Idaho, from Boise State. One is the Alpine Scholarship and one is the Payette Scholarships, and they have their respective GPA requirements. One of them is approximately $2,000 and the other one is about $8,000 a year. So when you apply as a Boise State student, as long as you meet the GPA requirement, you are automatically considered for this scholarship. So there's no additional scholarship application, there's no additional work you have to do. If you meet the requirements, you are given that. As an undergraduate student who is now an international student, there is also 2 additional scholarships that we provide for our international students. And they are the Global Excellence Award and the Global Distinction Award. The Global Excellence Award requires a 3.5 to a 4.0 GPA, and that is our highest award, and the Global Distinction requires a 3.0 to a 3.49. So the Global Distinction, the 3.0 to 3.49, gives you at about $8,400 per year for your academic per year, and then it's renewed every academic year, given that you are still meeting that GPA requirement. The Global Excellence Award is the 3.5 to 4.0, and is awarded about $16,920-ish, depending on the academic year and what tuition does. And that's also awarded on an annual basis, given that you still meet the GPA requirements. And what those are designed to do is to kind of equalize the out-of-state tuition portion, right? So if you're given the Global Excellence Award and you get that $16,920, that covers the out-of-state tuition portion of your tuition. So now instead of showing that $25,000-ish, now you have about $8,000 a year, right, remaining. So it's a huge amount of money, right? Right? You have that kind of money. Y'all looking at me like you have $17,000 just sitting around looking for something to do. So that's huge, right? So this one does actually require so once you've applied and you've been admitted, there's an additional scholarship that you would apply for, which is a few essays, and your essays would be reviewed, and that's how you would be admitted. So now tips on how to do this. Always apply early. Do not wait until the last minute for 2 reasons. One is you're not going to be able to write your best essay if you wait till the last minute. And if that's what's determining $17,000 in your life, you should probably spend some time on it, right? So always apply early for that reason. And then secondly, especially international students, there is a whole visa process that comes after you're admitted, right? You get admitted, you get the scholarship, but if you wait till the last minute, you still have to go to the embassy, you still have to do all of these other things in order for you to actually get here and start courses, right? And you don't want to get excited and you're like, okay, I have everything set, but then now you're delayed because you can't get the right documentation, right? So the earlier you do it, the better. Super, super important. Secondly is, I kind of mentioned this before, write a good essay. Ask other people to read your essays. Ask for help. Review it multiple times. The more eyes you have on it, probably the better it is, and the better bet that you actually get the funds and you're actually able to access these opportunities. So now that we've covered Boise State, we've covered funding, I think that's kind of what we want to talk about, right? Okay, any other questions? Questions?
Thank you. You mentioned those two global awards. Can you start with one and then move on to the other one?
Absolutely.
Is that a possibility?
Can you start on one scholarship and go to the other?
Yeah.
No,
yeah. You start and then you get the better GPA and then.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. But these scholarships are actually only reviewed for those who are incoming first-year students, right? So even if, say, you started at Boise State and now you're in your second semester, you could not apply for these scholarships because you are no longer a first-year undergraduate student. So these are based upon you entering into your first year at Boise State as an undergraduate student. I would say an option. You could always come as a transfer student, and transfer students can also apply for certain scholarships as well. Like say you're like, my GPA is not quite what it needs to be. You could take a few courses at your home institution. You could raise your GPA and then apply when your GPA is a little bit better. But there are a couple options, but these are specifically for undergraduate first-year students. And then now I realize I didn't talk about graduate students, right? Why didn't you ask? Like, that's like all of you. Graduate students have a couple different opportunities in terms of funding. One, I would say that is the most prominent is either getting a graduate assistantship, a teaching assistantship, doing something of that sort. These often require a 3.3 GPA or higher, and because our graduate programs require 3.0, these assistantships require 3.3 and above oftentimes, and will include the full cost of tuition, the required insurance, and oftentimes a stipend depending on the program. But these are very, very much left to the discretion of the program. There's not one way that it goes just across the board. The kinesiology program can do it differently than the psychology program, and they can do it differently than the social work program. And what they use to determine those metrics is dependent upon that program. So if someone is looking into that path, I would recommend they contact the program coordinator specifically, ask them what they're looking for, what metrics they're using to determine this, and it's also based on funding, right? So if they get grant money for a specific year and they want to be admitted and give you the graduate assistantship for that semester, it may not be there the next semester because it's attached to a grant. So those things are really important. In addition, there is a GEMS scholarship for graduate students, and this does similar thing to the Global Excellence in that it waives the out-of-state tuition portion of tuition. Yes?
I have a
question regarding the undergraduate scholarships.
Mhm.
So, for example, it's not all countries that uses the GPA system. Exactly, especially with international students when they are coming into the country. So how exactly will Boise State, like what's the equivalent of a 3.0 GPA to, what's the international equivalent here?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that is my job description. So international admissions has a process, and we use lots of credential evaluation systems and a lot of information to determine what mark sheets from this country are and what that means to a GPA. For example, on grade scales that are French that oftentimes go 0 to 20 or 1 to 20, I can't remember. We know that, and they have a joke that 18 is close to God. Nobody gets 18. So we can't, we can't now make our GPA requirement the same exact way that we do it for those students. So we individually look at transcripts and we evaluate each transcript just based off of like, some of them are like federally recognized standards, and some of them are like internationally standards, like say you're taking and you went to an international baccalaureate school, an IB school, there's a way that your grades would transfer into a GPA. If you went to a school in India, there's ways to calculate your mark sheets to a US GPA, and that's how we go through that process.
If a small local employer wanted to advertise like internship opportunities or part-time opportunities to international students specifically, what's the process to do that?
That is a great question. That is not an admissions question. But so for that question specifically, I would defer to our international student services. We kind of work together. What we call is, our unit is called the Center for Global Education. So that's a combination of international admissions, international student services, which specifically focuses on students who are currently enrolled at Boise State, and then a few other departments that are like international scholars, individuals who are here teaching at Boise State and doing things like that. So international student services is probably the go-to, and I do not want to tell you a lie. Any other questions?
Are there any options for scholarships for undergrad, like a scholarship that will just take care of everything?
Not from the International Admissions Office, right? So our highest amount is what would waive that out-of-state tuition portion. But as a Boise State enrolled admitted student, you're able to apply for a lot of other scholarships on top of that. So just because you've been given that Global Excellence Scholarship doesn't mean you can't apply other things and then also like put those on top.
Yes. Sorry, just a
He
question.
has the mics.
Sorry, what's Boise State's disposition on spring admission for undergrads?
In terms of scholarships?
No, the admission, like, do undergrads come in just in the fall, or they're
Okay.
allowed to come in?
Yeah, so you're able, for undergraduate students, you can apply for fall or spring. And you would be eligible for these scholarships regardless of whether you apply for the spring or for the fall. Sometimes if students miss that, they start their application maybe a little later and they miss the scholarship deadline for that fall semester, they oftentimes will defer. So they're already admitted, but then we'll try to meet that scholarship deadline for the spring semester.
Thank you. I guess I just want to clarify that. Do programs bring in people in the spring?
Yes.
Okay.
Undergraduate students, you can come whenever.
Okay.
You can come in the spring. You can come spring or fall. International students will not be admitted during the summer, and that's specifically attached to immigration things and trying to get a process together that it won't happen fast enough for you to be here in the summer. Yeah.
I just want you to throw some light on a hypothetical case. You made mention of the out-of-state tuition, and one of the ways you can eliminate that out-of-state tuition will be if you get some of the scholarship benefits. Now, let's say we have an international student that came into the U.S. on an F1 visa. Now, based on what you've just explained, they're going to be subject to the out-of-state tuition. Now, they may be eligible for that scholarship or may not. If they are not, then they're saddled with the whole of, that tuition. Now, let's say while in school, they eventually get married to an American citizen or a permanent resident, and they start the green card process based on being married in the U.S. Now, during the course of the green card process, this person now has their employment authorization. They've been in the state for a while. What would be the applicable tuition? Would they be regarded as a resident for in-state tuition, or are you still going to treat them as an international student?
Yeah, so that's very dependent, because you can be, it's important to separate whether you're an international student, whether international or domestic is separate from whether you're in-state or out-of-state, your residency, right? Because you can be a domestic student who is out-of-state, right? You can be from California and still have to pay those out-of-state tuition fees because you're not a resident. So there is a process for both domestic and international students to be able to apply and see if they qualify the requirements to be an in-state resident. But it's very much heavily based upon you being here under a certain metric, and one of them is that you're not primarily here because of school, right? So if you live here and you've lived here 6 years, and all those 6 years, the reasons you are here is because of school specifically, that's going to be difficult for them to be a in-state resident for tuition purposes, because the primary reason you're here is because of school. Those things change a little bit, and I don't want to speak specifically because there's a lot of factors that come into it, both for students who are international students and those who are domestic students. There's a lot of gray areas and a lot of specifics as to meeting that standard. But if you wanted to, you could definitely look into it and see if that's an option somewhere in your education. But there's very specific requirements, so I don't want to speak to it directly. Yeah. All right, thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That was great. So now we'll be taking a 5 minutes break or recess. If you want to stretch your feet or want to walk around, catch some sunlight or vitamin D or whatever, you're welcome to do that. And also, I do want to let you know we have these Navigate Conference feedback forms on all the tables. If you could kindly fill it out outside. I mean, when you are done or with your breaks or anytime at your convenience before the end of this event. And also there's snacks inside if you want to get some snacks and get some soda or drinks, get yourself refreshed. It's gonna be a little bit of a longer day, so be prepared. We still have so much to unpack, and we'll be unpacking so much stuff. Immigration is still coming in, and entrepreneurship and all that. So thank you all for joining us, and for those watching online, we appreciate you. Stay tuned, and we'll be back with you shortly. Thank you. All right, guys. Yeah, we're getting ready to start the next section. If you are still getting some snacks, get ready to wrap it up, and let's get our snacks and settle down and bring more people. I'll just give us a few more minutes to get settled, and we'll be back online shortly. All right, we are back online, and thank you, everyone. Feel free to bring your snacks to your table if you would like that. Just ensure no spills. If we have spills, let's signal to someone so we can get it cleaned up. And the next section we'll be moving on to will be the immigration section. And I will encourage everyone, if you have questions that you would like to ask, you can also write it down. If you don't want to speak on that questions, you can write it down and get it across to me later. Then I can always pass it around or read your questions. And also, let's be guided regarding those questions. We do not want personal related questions. You can create scenarios around that, but please do not ask questions based on what you are going through in regards to immigration status or immigration process. So if you have questions regarding immigration, just rephrase them, and just so we are not providing legal counsel to anyone. That's the purpose of that. So welcome back, everyone, and we are on the last section of this event, and shortly we'll be introducing immigration attorney. And like I said previously, if you missed that, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, you can also write it down, and we'll be happy to pass it when the time is due. Right now, I would like to introduce our immigration attorney. She is based in Florida, and she represents immigration clients locally in Ocala, in Florida, and also nationally in all 50 states of the United States of America, and internationally before the U.S. consulate and embassies worldwide. Please welcome Attorney Osaz Hiamo.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction. Now, when Brother Isi Oluwa, did I pronounce it well? Yes, Ishe Oluwa, okay, contacted me about this program, it reminded me of what David said. He said, I was glad when they said, let's go to the house of God. When he told me this was a program being put together by the church, my schedule was packed, but I said, you know what? I just have to make the time and go. So I'm thankful that I'm here today. Thank you for inviting me. My special thanks goes to the General Overseer, Pastor Michael, his very beautiful wife, everyone that has put in the necessary effort to make this program a success. Thank you very much. As you very well know, my name is Oses Iyamu. I'm an immigration attorney. I've been doing this for 15 years. My practice is predominantly immigration law. We do a little bit of employment law, some humanitarian immigration visas, a little bit of investment visas, and a lot of citizenship issue, naturalization and nationality issues. Currently, we don't take asylum cases, but I see, I was told to just touch on it, just to give some basic information about that. Before I proceed, is it okay if I say a word of prayer? Okay. Father, we ask that you be glorified in this time and in this place. Father, we ask that your wisdom flows through me. I pray you grant your people understanding. Let this be a productive section that brings you glory and honor in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Now, before I go ahead, a few caveats here. This is just general information. I'm not here as your immigration attorney. I'm not here to give you specific legal advice about your own situation. So we're just here, just to talk, have some fun regarding immigration. So any information you get here today, please do not construe it as legal advice. Number two, whatever we talk about here today does not create an attorney-client relationship. You're not my client, I'm not your attorney, but I'm your sister, okay? For guidance regarding your own specific immigration issue, I recommend speak to an immigration attorney who is able to make time, understand the facts of your case, and see how best to direct you and to help you. Do we have an understanding about that? We're good? Okay. I know some of us here are natural-born citizens, and a lot of us here are foreigners. Now, for those of us that are foreigners, I know one of our greatest aspirations in this country is to become an American citizen. True or false? Come on, true or false? True. Now, when you come into the United States, irrespective of how you came in, and let's say you eventually got the green card, you became a permanent resident, the natural progression is for you to consider applying for citizenship. And one of the common ways you do that is through a process we call naturalization. Now, when we go through that, we acquire the necessary citizenship. But understand that citizenship is not mandatory. It's optional for foreigners. It's up to you if you want it or if you don't want it. It's just that if you intend to make the U.S. home permanently and everything is here, then you may as well take advantage. And citizenship gives you certain benefits that you being a permanent resident wouldn't have. So just have that at the back of your mind. You also have to understand that even when you're a permanent resident and have this great aspiration to become a United States citizen, depending on your history, depending on what has happened, depending on the facts of your case, it may not be an option for you. It may just be a dream that can never come true. So also keep that in mind. Now, some of the advantage of actually becoming a citizen is, one, it creates a sense of security, knowing that I'm an American citizen, I cannot be deported, correct? Okay. Now, for a lot of us foreigners, it also creates a sense of having arrived. I've arrived. At least now I can settle down and pursue the American dream. I can put some roots down. Now I have the liberty to invest because this is home now permanently. I cannot be uprooted anywhere. Okay? So that's good. Another benefit is, as a citizen, you now have a voice in the affairs of America through your vote. Your vote counts. America is one of the countries where your vote actually counts. I know in some of our countries back home, it doesn't matter how many people vote, things just, it's already determined before even you came out or went out to vote. Then we also know that as an American citizen, you get to have the job benefits. One of our brothers here asked a question regarding the job opportunity of going into law enforcement. And like the officer rightly said, it requires you to be a United States citizen. So if you're a student you have that aspiration to work in law enforcement, you can already see that you not being a citizen is already a limitation. So you becoming a citizen allows you to eliminate so many barriers and limitations. Now, the other benefit we'll look at is now ability to sponsor family members. Now, not so many people like that. Some people call it chain migration. But you know what? Right now, it's the law. And America is a country of laws. So, as a citizen, you're allowed to sponsor family members. So if you ever find yourself in that position, take advantage of it while the law is still in existence. So these are just a little bit of the benefits that comes with you being a citizen. Now, the question I would like to ask you all is, when you do become a citizen, especially through naturalization as a foreigner, do you think you can lose that citizenship? Do you think you can lose it? Okay, I like this. Who's saying no? Who's saying yes? Okay, why do you think you can lose it? I want this to be an interactive section because I really want us to have a clear understanding of what we talk about here today, and I want it to be, as fun as possible.
Yeah. I may be wrong, but I understand that there are some things that you can do, maybe some heinous crime that can cause you to lose your citizenship. I may be wrong, but something like that.
Okay, so let's look at this critically. You're a citizen. You get involved in a crime. That's the criminal justice affair. What has that got to do with your citizenship? You see, when you become a citizen and you go commit a crime, which I'm not saying do, please don't. When you do become a citizen, be a plus, be a blessing, okay? America has blessed a lot of us. The best way to give back is be a blessing. So let's say Mr. A is an American citizen, commits a crime. As an American citizen, can you be deported because of that? Because of the fact that you committed a crime. Now, they can lock you up somewhere and throw away the key, but does that warrant you losing your citizenship over that? No. Okay, we'll look at that, sir. We're not stopping there. Now, someone said no. Who said no? Okay.
I'm just thinking that I've never heard it before. So.
Oh, really? How long have you been in the U.S.?
2.5 years.
2.5 years?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, welcome to the real world. Okay. Now, remember how I said as a foreigner, you become a citizen, most cases through the process called naturalization. We also have a process we call denaturalization. So let's look at this case scenario, okay? I'm just going to give you a breakdown. Who can give me a name? Just a name. Okay. Okay, no, Jacob? Okay, we'll just say Mr. J, okay? So whether it's John, whether it's Jacob, it doesn't matter. Now, okay, Mr. J comes into the United States as a tourist. He came in on a tourist visa, okay? He overstays. He eventually gets married to a United States citizen, okay? The American citizen spouse sponsors him, and he gets the green card. Thereafter, he becomes eligible for United States citizenship. He gets the citizenship. Now, like I said, it creates a sense of security. I've arrived. 40 years later, 40 years after being a U.S. citizen, he gets into trouble with the law. Now, you would think they would deal with him under the criminal justice system. Okay? Convict him, give him all the whatever and all. But you see, why the process of the criminal justice system was going on, the government launched an investigation into his immigration status for whatever reason. Now, they traced back, they were able to track the wife that sponsored him for the green card. This is a wife that's now an ex. And they got a confession out of her. What was the confession? Okay. Well, they got a confession out of her that at the time she sponsored him for the green card, although they were married on paper, they were never living, they were not living together. Although on the application they said they had joint residence, joint this, joint that, but it was not true. Now, what do you think the government did? It was forgiven? Well, you see, this is where God is so different. The mercies of God, it endures forever. It renews every day, but not immigration. In fact, the U.S. immigration system can actually be so unforgiving. So, what do you really think happened? Now they've discovered that the whole thing was a lie. What do you think the government did? They started a process to denaturalize him. They took away his green card. They took away his citizenship. Now, usually when they take away your citizenship for whatever reason, if the green card is still okay, you have something to fall back on, even when you lose the citizenship. But in this case, did he have something to fall back on? Because he never had a green card. It was all a defective green card. So at the end of the day, he fell down flat. And it was a big fall. So they took away his citizenship and they deported him. After how many years? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Suppose before getting naturalized, I renounced to my own nationality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then become a U.S. citizen.
You become stateless. You become stateless. Now you have to understand that. Let me quickly touch on this. You've just raised a very important issue. Now, when people do become naturalized citizens, you remember one of the requirements. I couldn't see me. Now, remember one of the requirements for the naturalization process is you're going to renounce your citizenship, your loyalty to every other country. In the eyes of America, you're not an American citizen. But you see, whether or not you lose your birthright citizenship in your native country depends on the law of that country. So what country are you from? Benin Republic? Okay. Now the question will be, in Benin Republic, the fact that you became an American citizen, did that lead to a loss of your birthright citizenship in Benin?
Countries like Ivory Coast or Cameroon.
Okay, you lose it automatically? Yes. Okay. So to answer your question, you lose your citizenship, you lose your ability to be in this country, you become stateless. The issue now becomes, do they have a place to deport you to? Or Are they going to be forced to keep you here even though you've been ordered removed, but they have nowhere to send you as of now? It doesn't stop the fact that you lose your citizenship and you have no status in this country. Do you understand? So whether or not some other things can be done, you know, being that they cannot send you anywhere, if they release you on an order of supervision, would that allow you maybe get a work permit, stay in the country, have a life pending when they can decide what they're going to do with you? Okay, so that was okay.
Yeah, so I did have a couple of questions, but I think you've already answered some of them, because I was wondering, if you become stateless, then where are they deporting you to? You just addressed that. And then I'm also, what are the options for dual citizenship in America?
Okay. Like I said, when you do become a naturalized citizen, in the eyes of the American government, your loyalty is to America. But whether or not, what country are you from? Ghana? Okay. Now, in Ghana, when you do become a citizen of another country, do you lose your Ghanaian citizenship automatically or by operation of law?
Yeah, so if you choose to become a full citizenship, you lose that of Ghana, unless you become a dual citizen.
What do you mean?
Yes.
Is there a process you have to go through in Ghana to preserve your Ghanaian citizenship in order for you to then have dual citizenship?
Yeah, so there are options for you to go through to become a citizen of another country and Ghana at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But in that situation, there are some diplomatic jobs you can't do. For instance, you can't be a member of parliament, you can't be a minister and all that.
Oh, of course, you're going to have some issues. But my point is this. Whether or not you're able to have that dual citizenship is going to be dependent on the laws of your native country. Okay. So, for example, if Ghana's have a law in place, or any of the countries, that allows you, even though you've taken up citizenship in another country, but there's a law in place that says the fact that you've taken up citizenship in another country is not enough for you to lose your birthright citizenship here, then that way you're able to keep this and you still have the American, now you have dual citizenship. But like you rightly said, when you have dual citizenship, it's beautiful, it's a good thing, but it also has some of its downside. Yeah. You understand? So you've just pointed out some of those downside, especially when tomorrow now you want to become a politician, one of the big boys. And then somebody says, you're an American citizen. You can't, yeah. So keep that in mind. Okay, ma'am.
On that train of thought, hypothetically, you're an American citizen. You don't lose your citizenship from your state of birth. Okay. So you go to that country for a visit. Bad things happen. Does America come and get you? Hypothetically.
Okay. I would say, so long as you're a U.S. citizen, you should be able to tap into the benefits that flows from you being an American citizen, but it depends on the facts. Let me give you a case scenario, for example. Let's say, name. Okay, Mr. K. Okay. Now let's say Mr. K has dual citizenship. Okay. In this case, let's say you asked the question. Now you have dual citizenship. You went back to your native country. Okay. Now the question is going to be, how did you go back? Did you go back as a citizen of that country, or did you go back as an American citizen?
Clearly, I'm going to go back as an American.
Meaning, how did you go, and did you go?
Is the question, how did you enter into
Yes, how did you, okay.
The blue passport.
That's American passport?
Yeah.
Good. So if anything goes wrong, you're treated as an American citizen. You have access to the American embassy. You know what? Yes, if anything goes wrong, America will come get you. Yes, yes. You see, this is one of the confidence. Wait. See, this is one of the confidence we have when we become an American citizen. For example, when people say, you know what, I'm going to visit this place, visit that, I tell them, listen, before you go, notify the American embassy that you're coming. That one of its citizens is going to be visiting. That way, if anything goes wrong, they've got your back. Okay, ma'am?
If I'm going to Nigeria, because I'm from Nigeria, and
See, this is one of the issues about dual citizenship. Now, these are married couple. She's reminding me she's an American citizen. Man is like, well, I'm an American. You understand? So, you know. So.
And I decide to go with my green passport. Does that mean if anything happens, I can reach out?
I don't think so. I think it just depends on the facts again. It depends on the facts of the situation. Now, it depends on what's going on, what the rules are. If let's say there's a crisis, for example, and they're saying Americans are going to go after its citizens, and they're not looking into how you got in there. You understand? All they are interested in is, do you have proof that you're an American citizen? Then how you got in there will not be relevant. You understand? It just depends on the facts and what's going on and what the requirements are in order for you to get that benefits or whatever they're giving out. Can I proceed? Now, with regards to the story of Mr. J, we remember the story of Mr. J that led us this far. What's our take home on that?
Don't lie when you're applying for citizenship.
Come again?
Don't lie when you're applying for citizenship.
Avoidance of fraud, avoidance of misrepresentation, big. What else?
Call Officer Jessica. What is illegal before you do something?
Well, not a bad advice. If you're not too sure, ask questions, because ignorance of the law is no excuse. Okay? What else? Come again? Well, it depends on what you mean by arranged marriages. Correct, marriage fraud. You know, back home, even where we come from, our own parents do arrange marriage for us. They will tell you this family is this, their son is this, it would be nice to marry into it. They push you in the right direction. It's still arranged marriage, but what you're trying to drive home is avoiding a fraudulent marriage for immigration purpose. Any other thing? Any other thing? Any other lesson? Yes, ma'am?
Commit any crime, whether a citizen or not.
Is that possible? This is America.
Not like
This is, Officer Jessica, Can you throw light on that? This is America. I tell people, listen, it's so easy to find yourself on the wrong side of the law in this country. It's so easy. There are things you never thought is the law until you've done it, and they're telling you it's the law, and because it's the law, these are the and you're like, what? That's the reality. So we strive to do our best to stay on the right side of the law, avoid crime and all of that, but sometimes it's really tough, okay? So I hear you there, avoid any kind of crime, citizen or not. But what else? What else?
offend your spouse enough to tell.
That is a no-go area because it's not even possible. Are you married?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
6 months.
Huh?
About 6 months.
Oh, I understand where you're coming from. You're still in the honeymoon stage. Let me give you a word of advice. The one person that will offend you the most is your spouse. You guys will grind on each other almost on a daily basis. It's called the maturing stage. It's the stage where where the Niger will say you sandpaper each other so that the best in you can come out. This is where you need the grace of God. Otherwise, you can join the equation out there of, those that just didn't want to put in the hard work, okay? Or, didn't work out for them, okay? So, what I'm looking for, I'm not hearing it. Okay?
Like the citizenship can be lost.
Yeah, we already acknowledged that. I'm saying the take-home lesson. We're just throwing light on some of the take-home lessons. We've talked about avoiding fraudulent marriages. We've talked about avoiding fraud, misrepresentation during the citizenship process. Don't offend your spouse, okay? Call Jessica, Officer Jessica, before you do any of such nonsense, okay?
I would say come in on a legal framework.
Okay. Coming on a legal framework, it depends on what you mean by that. I would say do your best not to put yourself at the mercy of others. A lot of things go on behind closed doors. A lot of deals are struck, even when you know it's illegal. Even when you know it's unethical, it's against the law. We just want to believe we can be quick and fast, so long as it's just we. We can strike it. We don't have to tell them the truth. But you see, when you do that, you put yourself at the mercy of the other person. It's just a question of time. If they choose to betray you or to come after you, heaven help you. Heaven help you. So why put yourself in that position in the first place? Can you really trust people? Absolutely. So I think Mr. J, if there was no such thing between him and his spouse and it was clean, I don't think the government would have succeeded. Or maybe, he would have been in a position to fight back. The necessary proof and all. But you see, if it's the truth, then you're handicapped. You can't even argue or say, no, it's not true, it's not, no. Because deep down, yeah. So that's that. Now, one of the things I always tell people is I know in the Bible we have 10 commandments. I always tell people, listen, the 11th commandment says, thou shalt not be caught. It's okay until you're caught. When you're feeling, you've outsmarted the system and all of that, it's okay until you're caught. And like I said, the immigration system is not so forgiving. Okay? Now, any other question before? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so for the Mr. J, assuming both parties assuming both parties are foreigners, are they going to be affected?
Okay, what do you mean foreigners?
Like both of them came here, like maybe the first spouse came here under the green card and then citizenship and then married Mr. J.
Okay.
So are they going to be affected?
Okay, very good question. What's your name?
Gladys.
Gladys, let's say you were the wife of Mr. J. Now they come to you. Are you going to just give out that confession
just like that, without protecting yourself? Officer Jess? You're going to strike some deal. You want immunity. If you cooperate with them, you want to make sure it doesn't come back to bite you. Because you were part of the marriage fraud in the first place. There are prison terms and there are penalties for that. So you're not just going to sweep in. In fact, if you know it's going to bury you along with Mr. K, you're going to tell them, I don't know anything about it. True or false? True. True. So please, Linda, before you go giving out a confession, yes, call Officer Jessica to find out, hey, officer. Hey, Officer Jess, if I give out this confession, how is it going to come back and bite me on the behind? Yes. Yes. Okay, can we move on now? Okay. Now, I know for a lot of you that are new on a non-immigrant visa, the next aspiration is, okay, how can I get the green card? Okay, that at least allows me to settle down, have some semblance of stability before I get the, almighty citizenship. One of such ways is marriage. Marriage to either an American citizen or a lawful permanent resident. Marriage. But you have to also understand, when you get married to a citizen or a permanent resident, there's this presumption of fraud on the part of the government. And who can tell me why there is the presumption of fraud?
Sometimes people do that just to bring in others illegally.
Correct. Okay, correct. The reason is because a lot of foreigners have been known to marry American citizens of permanent resident, not for the right reasons, but just to dupe the system and obtain their immigration benefit. That's marriage fraud. It's against the law, and it has a lot of, its own penalties and drawbacks. So understand that. Now, what I'm just touching on is just some of the ways, not all, just some. Now, we have the option of the K-1 fiancé visa, which eventually leads to marriage. I'm sure somebody's going to say the 90 days fiancé, right? You watch the show? Okay. Now, for those of you that are students, let's say you come in as, you're coming on your F1, you're hoping to find a way to regularize your status to allow you to stay and become a permanent resident, but somehow nothing is clicking. But you're dating this chick. She's an American citizen. You really like her, and you know she feels your vibe. You know she likes you, okay? But it's as if, you guys are not ready to take it to the next step. For you, that will be the only viable solution. And it will be a good solution because the both of you really love each other. It's not like for for real, it's a real relationship. But somehow, it's just not the right time. You guys feel you still need time to build and be sure this is what is good for the both of you. Now, you complete your schooling, every other thing is completed, but nothing is keeping you in the US, and there's no way to fix your status. Now you're at a crossroad. Do I remain and become undocumented? Or do I go back and respect the laws and the process in this country? Now, let's say you decide to go back, but you continue with that relationship. You keep nurturing that relationship. You build that relationship to the point where she's like, you know what? We can't do this long distance thing anymore.
Now, how can you come back? The K-1 visa becomes an option, especially if you guys intend the marriage to take place in the United States. So keep that in mind when you start a good relationship, but it needs time to blossom. Our hope is not lost. Okay? Now you may be wondering, on the other hand, what about if I just remain, become undocumented, eventually she marries me, I can still file the green card. Correct? You're thinking it. I know somebody's thinking it. Is that a possibility? If she's an American citizen, yes. But it depends on who you're dealing with too. Some people may not just put up with that. The fact that you're willing to dishonor the system, to disrespect the law, it lessens you in their view. You get what I mean? It creates the impression, why are you so desperate to stay in this country? And why are you trying to even marry me just because of this? You know, so it just depends on who you're dealing with. Some may tell you, you know what, just forget the immigration process. When we get married, I sponsor you. But the truth is, you have no guarantee that that marriage will take place. And God help you, you meet the wrong partner. That can become a tool of control and oppression. But thank God for VAWA. Anybody familiar with VAWA? You familiar with VAWA? Okay. That's the Violence Against Women's Act, which takes the power away from oppressive American citizens and permanent residents who's using the immigration tool to threaten, to oppress, and to abuse their spouse. The government has created a pathway for you to pursue your permanent residence on your own without the American or permanent resident spouse. So long as you meet all the other legal requirements, you can still get your green card. Okay? Now, the other option will be through employment, through investment, through cancellation of removal. If you're placed in deportation proceedings and you meet certain requirements of the law, you can actually apply for your deportation to be canceled and request for a green card to be issued to you. That can only be done if you're in deportation proceedings. Now, we also have relatives sponsoring you for the green card. So let's look at a case scenario here. This time, Mr. Alex. Mr. Alex comes into the United States on a student visa. He's so excited. For him, this is the golden opportunity. Being in God's own land. For a lot of people outside the U.S., they see America as God's own land. They see America as the promised land. Have you ever wondered why people will risk their lives, go through the desert, knowing they could die there in the process, just to come to America? It's that land of hope for a lot of foreigners outside the U.S. There are people that have lost their lives just trying to get here because they had that belief that if only I can make it to God's own land, if only I can make it to the promised land, there is hope. But then you get here and you start to question the American dream. Is it even real? Because all you do is work and pay bills. Okay, so Mr. Alex comes into the United States on a student visa for a 4-year program. His elder brother is an American citizen. Now, Mr. Alex, he's determined to stay in the U.S. He vows to himself, you know what? I'm going to make my big brother so proud of me. I'm going to do so well in school. And in return, my brother is going to sponsor me to stay and have the green card. Now, is that a realistic expectation on the part of Mr. Alex? No? Why? Okay, anything could happen to the brother. Now let's assume nothing happens to the brother. God preserves the brother.
Yeah, I could change his mind.
Okay, well, if it's from Africa and the parents gets involved, you know how that's going to turn out.
Yeah, sure.
Okay? So let's assume everything is in place. Mom and dad back home have already told him, listen, this is your baby brother. He has worked hard. He has stayed in school. He has a bright future ahead. You just do your own part. You just do your own part for him to also stay in that country with you. So is that a realistic expectation, all things being equal? It is? Okay. Why do you think it is? Okay, now everything, yes, blood is thicker than water. We've looked at it from the family perspective. It's possible, it's realistic, especially when mom and dad gets involved. But let's look at it from the immigration perspective. Is that expectation realistic? It's not going to be legal? How? Okay, ma'am.
I think, first of all, maybe when Alex was filling his visa and they asked him if you have any relatives in the U.S.
He said yes.
Okay, he said yes at that point.
He was transparent, he was honest.
What about age? What if Alex is over 21 and, I mean, the brother is already over 21.
The brother who's an American citizen?
No, the guy that is waiting to be filed for.
That's Alex?
Yes.
If he's over 21?
Yeah. Can he still be filed for? I mean,
By his brother?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm just itching to illustrate something. Okay. Now, as an American citizen, as we see in this fact scenario, Alex's elder brother is an American citizen. And remember when I was explaining some of the benefits of citizenship, is the fact that it empowers you to sponsor family members. Now, part of the family members you're able to sponsor as an American citizen are your siblings, brothers and sisters. Alex falls into that group. So the question becomes, okay, Alex is here for 4 years to go to school. Will brother be able to sponsor him? Let's take a look at that. Now, brother who is an American citizen, when he sponsors, depending on who he's sponsoring, they're going to fall into different classes or category or family preference categories under the immigration laws. So for example, if brother had a wife back home and he decides to sponsor that wife, she's going to fall under the immediate relative category. If brother had parents and he wants to sponsor his parents, family, immediate relative category, that's where they're going to go. Now, if brother have children that are married, the married children are going to go under a different category. If he has children that are not married but above 21, a different category. Children that are under 21 and not married, a different category. Siblings, a different category. Now, depending on the category you fall under, there are different sets of rules for this category. So, the factors that comes into consideration here will be age, marital status. So let's look at the category Alex will fall under. It's going to fall under the F.
So I was asking if Alex would actually fall under the immediate family for the man.
No, remember we said immediate relative. Who did we indicate there?
The wife.
Wife, parent, and then unmarried. No, we didn't put siblings there.
Wow.
Okay? No, siblings are going to fall into a separate group called the F4 family preference category, F4. Okay? Now, for these various categories, there are some of the categories that requires you to have what we call a visa number in order to become eligible to file for the green card. There are 2 stages to this application process. Under stage 1, Alex's brother puts in the alien relative petition, which establishes the fact that Alex is his biological sibling or step sibling, whatever the case may be, okay? Now, him filing that application alone does not give Alex legal status in the US. It does not authorize Alex to remain in the US. It does not permit Alex to work in the US. It does not protect Alex from being deported from the United States. The only thing it does is establish the the relationship. Are we clear on that? So when the brother filed that application, Alice got in line, okay, to start waiting for a visa number. You may be wondering, what's a visa number? Let's see if we can break this down. Now, for this category of F4, this is just for illustration purpose. Let's say in 2000, okay, the government gave out 50,000 visas for this category. But 500,000 people applied. We already have a problem, right? When you file the application, we're in line. So the first 50,000, they're going to grab the visas, which then makes them eligible to file for the green card. Okay? If you don't get a visa number, you cannot file the green card. So let's say the next year, the government gives out maybe another 50,000 visas. But this time around, 1.5 million people applied. Remember, we already have 450,000 waiting. The 1.5 gets behind. So this creates a long waiting line. So until Alex gets that visa number, there's no hope of him becoming eligible for the green card through his brother. So the question you may want to ask now is, okay, we know how Alex gets in line. We know there's a waiting process. How long is the waiting time? Does anybody have access to the internet here? Okay, good. Now, who's going to be our researcher? Okay, please go to Google, type in visa bulletin. You're all free to do that. Type in visa bulletin. This is the month of May 2022. Click on the visa bulletin for that. You're there? Good. I want you to scroll down. Now, do you see the F4? Yes, F4, what does it say? Correct. So we've established the category. Now go down to the table that gives you the countries. Now you see there's a country there for, I think, the Philippines. Yes. Different countries. Let's say this person in question is from Nigeria. So this person is going to fall under the other chargeability area. I want you to go under F4. Yeah. Under that category, what date do you see there?
22nd March 2007.
Good. It means people who filed their alien relative petition before 22nd of March 2007 can now go back to the top. What's the date? The visa bulletin you're looking at is what date? May 2022.
That's 15 years.
15 years waiting period. Yes. That's why I said pull it up yourself so you can see for yourself. So when you have a sibling files on your behalf, understand you're going to have to wait 15 years in order to become eligible for the green card. It shock you? But you see, it's important that you understand this. Why? Because a lot of people have this wrong notion that because I have an American citizen, he can just file for me. I've had people come to me and they want to file the alien relative petition and the green card at the same time. I'm like, what are you thinking about? This is not an immediate relative category. You have to understand the category and the law that's applicable. So let's go back to our case. Now, my question again is the expectation of Mr. Alex regarding his brother sponsoring him for the green card while he's here for a 4-year program realistic? Now you know why it's not realistic. Because that 4 years, he's going to wait that 4 years, but he has 11 more years to wait. But who has money to pay all of that? Maybe they will come contact you and see what you can do. So if Alex is going to wait that entire 15 years in the US to become eligible, he must have something that keeps him in status legally. So if after his first degree program, like she rightly said, he can go back and go back and go back and hopefully, you know, acquire all the degrees, and then all is well. Okay? So this is important in order for you to avoid certain pitfalls. A lot of people have this notion that, oh, because my brother is an American citizen, I can stay, thereby jeopardizing whatever future opportunities they would have had through that sibling. So please keep that in mind. Any questions? Okay, any questions? Okay, we're good, right? Okay. Now, she said something very remarkable regarding why it was not realistic that when he went to the embassy, maybe he said he didn't have a brother. Now, let's look at our communication with the embassy. A lot of you here that came into the US as foreigners, you had to go through the embassy, right? Okay. There's a popular notion that whatever happens in Rome stays in Rome. Some foreigners have this notion that whatever happens at the embassy stays there and has nothing to do with whatever I'm doing in the US. No. No, that's not correct. Now, let's take an illustration again. This time, Mr. Desperate. Now, Mr. Desperate applies for a visiting visa at the US Embassy. Now, when you do apply for a visiting visa, you have to show you have no intention of staying in the US. You just want to come visit and then go back. You have to show you have ties to your home country. Now, when you're married and you're leaving your spouse behind, you know, that's the kind of tie, right? My wife is here, I'm married, I intend to come back to my family. So Mr. Desperate applies for a visiting visa, indicates he's married, but he's not married. He even got a fraudulent marriage certificate. Now he goes to the embassy, you know, everything goes well. Can't catch all of us, right? Some fall through the cracks, okay? Now, he gets the visa. He comes into the US. Now, during, he visits, let's say he overstays or, extended his status, he remains. And then he meets the love of his life. He meets the love of his life. It's like, ooh. And eventually they get married. Wife sponsors him for the green card. On the application, they ask him, have you ever been married? Absolutely not. I've never been married. This is the first and the last. They are invited for a marriage interview. Officer was very polite, welcomed them. How you guys doing? Mrs. Desperate, has your husband been married before? Oh, no, ma'am. Mr. Desperate, have you been married before? No, ma'am. How many times have you been married, Mr. Desperate? Just once. But the officer have Mr. Desperate file from the embassy right there on her desk. Because the embassy is part of the US government. It's only just stationed outside. It's called the US Embassy, not Nigeria Embassy. So you need to understand there's communication between the various US embassies and the US immigration agencies within the US. So whatever happens in any of these embassies does not always stay there. There's communication. So what do you think happened in this case? So this is one of the reasons I said fraud, misrepresentation. It does no good. It does no good. So, any questions before I move ahead? Okay, ma'am.
So, for example, if someone with green card files for his or her spouse who is back home, who is in his or her native country, how long will it take for that spouse to get the green card and move into the country? Yeah, since they are not in the F4 category, I believe.
Since what?
Since they are not in the F4 category, so.
Okay, the question we should be asking is what category will such spouse fall under? Such spouse will fall under the F2B category, spouse of a permanent resident of the United States. Now, if you look under that category, you're going to see it says C, correct? No, sorry, she's going to fall under the F2A. F2A for spouses and minor children of permanent resident. If you look under that category, it says C. Is that correct? Under the visa bulletin, what does it say? Correct. C means current, meaning there is a visa number available. So the only delay that's, what name do we use? Okay. So the only delay that will happen in Phoebe's case will be how long it will take the government to adjudicate the various process. There are 3 stages to the application process. And right now with the COVID, the entire process is messed up. So there's no waiting time for them to have a visa number available, but instead it's rather how long it will take the government to process stage 1, process stage 2, and for the embassy to say we have availability for interview. Right now with the COVID, most of the US embassies are not yet fully functional. So that's creating a lot of delays. So I can't specifically give you a time frame. The best I can tell you is you need to be patient. You need to be patient with the process. Your spouse or the hypothetical spouse needs to also understand the process and be patient, because you see, the delay that comes with the immigration process puts undue burden and hardship on the relationship. If there is no understanding about how long this is going to take, the spouse back home is going to start complaining. What's taking so long? Especially when they know somebody who got married 2 weeks ago and has relocated. They always know somebody. And now you're telling them there's this lawyer somewhere that says he should be patient. The first stage is going to take an average of 1 year. They're like, no, change that lawyer. She doesn't know what she's saying. You get what I'm saying? So understanding the process, understand all that there is, and the fact that you need to be patient. That's my first rule if you're going through the immigration process. Patience. If you lack patience, it's going to drive you crazy. It's going to drive you crazy. And a lot of things can go wrong as a result of that. Any other questions? Okay, sir.
Yeah, so I think we're just being one-sided, looking at someone who is already an American citizen or has a permanent residence, the person has a green card filing for another person. But let's look at someone who is here still studying, or the person has
Correct. We're getting there.
Working, and then
yeah, we're getting there. So let me see if I can jump. Let's look at a student. Okay. Now, as a student, when you come into the United States, you have to be proactive and you have to be strategic. Especially if your intention after schooling will be to, find a way to get the green card and move upwards. Now, for somebody who just clearly just wants to come study and go back, no big deal, okay? Study, do well, go back, impact your country. But if you're thinking of staying, you have to be proactive early in the process. So let's look at, you come in as an F1, you go to school. Now you understand that at the completion of your program, you're entitled to a 12 months OPT. If the program you studied is one of the STEM programs, then you get an additional 24 months, okay? Now, the OPT is just to allow you to gain some experience in your field of study. Now, let's look at a case scenario. Mr. Scholar comes into the United States on an F1 visa. He's interested in eventually remaining in the US. Upon completion of his program, he gets his OPT. Now, he starts working for this employer with his OPT. Employer is very happy with him, okay? How many of us are familiar with the H-1B visa here? You familiar with the H-1B? Good. Now, the H-1B is a specialty visa. It's a non-immigrant visa for specialty occupation, meaning a profession that requires you to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree to work in there. So the H-1B allows you to work in the US for up to 6 years. So in this case, so in this case, he gets his OPT. Let's assume this guy, had the additional 24 months OPT because he did one of the STEM programs. Now, remember the H-1B, there's a limitation. We only have 65,000 visas annually. So sometimes you may try and you may not be fortunate. So they tried the first year, they were not lucky. They tried the second year, guess what? He gets it. So he gets the H-1B, starts working for employer, worked for the employer for the first 3 years, got an extension of the H-1B for another 3 years, okay? What's Mr. Scholar's ultimate aim? The green card. Now, he tried to have the conversation with his employer about the green card process. After all, they sponsored him for the H-1B. He knows very well he brings value to the company. He's one of their best employees. He's very confident the company will do whatever needs to be done in order for him to stay. So he tries to raise the issue with the employer, okay, about when are we starting the green card processing for me. Employer says, oh, don't worry, we'll talk about it and we'll get back to you. Don't you worry. 5 years, 6 months. Nothing has started. Now, Mr. Scholar decides to speak to an immigration attorney. Thank you. Only to realize he's running out of time. Now, he gets back to the employer to say, what's going on? When are we starting this process? Now the employer tells him, you know what? It's actually against company policy. We don't sponsor for the green card. What's your name? It's Titus, Mr. T. Now, Mr. T, let's assume you were in the shoes of Mr. Scholar. Now, I know you'll feel bad. But what do you think he did wrong? Remember what I said about being proactive, being strategic? So, with this, because you said I should talk about students, you know? This is a clear fate that can befall any student that do not plan well. Correct. Thank you. So tell me, what do you think Mr. Scholar did wrong? Come again? The wrong job?
I think he could have.
Okay, started late. Didn't ask about the company policy.
Or he could have applied it on his own.
Well, it depends. Not everybody qualifies to apply on their own. Only if you are eligible. Okay? What? Very good. No.
Okay.
No. As an immigration attorney, I can tell you who is employing, who is not employing, and which will be a good fit for you, or who will be willing to sponsor you. We can tell you that. We really don't have any control over that. The best we can do will be to educate you so you have a clear understanding and a sense of direction and focus. That way you are able to make a well-informed decision as to whether or not this employer is part of your destiny moving forward with the green card. True or false?
It's true.
True. So, as a student, when you get that OPT or you're about to get that OPT, that's when you want to start having the conversation, especially with regards to whether or not this employer will be willing to sponsor you for the H-1B. Okay? Now, not all employers will sponsor you for the H-1B. Some employers will sponsor you for the H-1B, but they won't sponsor you for the green card. Now, one of the things you have to understand about the employment-based green card is this. Employers also have concerns. Okay? I'm an employer. I sponsor you for the green card. I go through all the hoops. I pay all the money. You get the green card with the understanding you're going to work for me. Well, permanently. But you know very well this is America. This is America. It's called on employment at will. Okay? So now if you're a very smart employee, you're going to pipe low. You're going to do your job well until you get that green card. Now, you get that green card, maybe you stay with me, you know, give and take a few months or a few years, and guess what? You start looking for greener pastures. So at the end of the day, depending on how it all plays out, I'm like, what did I do all this for? You get what I mean? There's this sense of, you know, so sometimes they have that concern as well. They may be willing to sponsor for the H-1B compared to the green card. Now, the H-1B is employer specific. It ties you to me as your employer. Do you understand? So if you leave, unless you have somebody else willing to also sponsor you, you could actually fall out of status and be required to leave. So for some employers, they may feel more comfortable with such an arrangement, knowing that you're fully dependent on this job for your immigration status. So You can see that for Mr. Scholar, the first thing he ought to have done during the whole job conversation is inquire about their policy. Not only just their policy, but would you be interested in sponsoring me? Not just for the green card. What's your policy also for the, not only just for the H-1B, but what's also your policy for the green card? And at what stage will you begin the green card application for me? As you can see in this case, you already spent 5 years, 6 months or so. And the H-1B is for how long? 6 years. Unless it falls under the category that allows for additional extensions. Otherwise, he's in hot water. So don't wait till last minute. Be proactive. I understand that for a lot of you that are new to the US, you don't understand the laws, you don't understand so many things. Speak to a professional. This is my situation. What are my options? What are my options? With that in mind, with that understanding, you come from a position of strength when you're, talking to your employer. Now, that doesn't mean if you get an employer who says, I'm not sponsoring, you don't work for them. No. If that's what you get at that point, fine, you go for it. But you understand this is not long term. I'm still looking. You still have to go out there, put yourself out there and search for someone who will be interested in sponsoring you eventually. So Mr. T. Claire, okay. Now, the other thing I want to touch on briefly is employment-based green card. There are different employment-based categories. There are those that require certain additional steps. There are those that don't require certain additional steps. We have the EB1 for those that are on top of their games. We have the EB2 for persons with advanced degrees. And also under the EB2, you have the option, if you can show that you're outstanding, you can also, you also have the option of filing the national interest waiver. Now, what do I mean by that? Under the EB2 and the EB3, which is for people with bachelor's degree, 2 years experience, 2 years experience of a particular skill, or even 2 years no skill or work experience. Now, you're going to be required as an employer to go through some steps when you're sponsoring these persons. Number one, you have to obtain a prevailing wage. You have to go through the labor certification process, which is going to require you to advertise that job position. Now, depending on the type of job and your location, if an employer is interested in sponsoring you, gets the prevailing wage, and they are able to pay the wage as government, advertises the job, but guess what? Gets applicants that are qualified and able. What do you think will happen? Yeah, because the whole aim of you trying to sponsor a foreigner is you have to show to the government, I couldn't find somebody within the US that is able to do this job for the amount and all of that. So when you test the job market through advertising and the recruitment steps, and you're not able to find somebody, now you have justification to move to the next stage of the application process, which is filing the permanent labor certification with the Department of Labor. But when you do the recruitment exercise, where you get people that are able and willing to take the job, is there justification to still move forward? It ends there. So it depends on the job industry, the location. So this is part of what you have to consider, you know, when you go through this labor certification, unless the employer is able to disqualify the applicants for job-related reasons. However, there are some of the employment-based category that does not require you to go through this process. If you can show that under the national visa, national waiver, national interest waiver, if you're able to show that you bring value to the table that's of national benefit, then the government will not require you to get an employer willing to sponsor you or have the job advertised first. Because of what you bring to the table, they are willing to waive that requirement and even allow you self-petition. So this is where you want to have that conversation with a professional. Go with a good CV. Let them see what your qualifications are and be able to have that conversation. Do you fall under any of those options that will allow you to self-petition? Do you understand the difference? And these are things you also, like I said, start early. This immigration process takes time. Takes time. So the earlier you know what you're doing and you start working with somebody, the better. Okay. I just want to touch on asylum. Okay, ma'am.
All right, maybe before we move on to asylum, can we discuss F2 visa?
F2?
Yes, dependent. Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you come into the United States, are you living? No, I just wanted to say goodbye. Okay. Now, the F1 visa, we all know what that is. That's you coming to school in the US. Now, if you're married or you have children and you want to come with your spouse and your kids under 21, they get the F2 dependent visa. Okay? However, understand that when they come in with you, your spouse cannot walk. So you better be buoyant enough to take care of yourself, your tuition, your studies, as well as your family, because your spouse is not allowed to work. So that's a limitation. So that's a limitation for the F2 visa. Now, the good thing is, if eventually you finish your school, you get that H-1B or that green card, your spouse, your children, everybody is able to benefit as your dependent. Does that clarify that for you? Okay. So we're just going to touch on...
Another question.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Mine is not really a question. It's just, it's
another hypothetical?
Not really. So, finding lawyers that can undo EB2 national interest waiver is a little bit tricky and difficult. So would you say your law firm handles that kind of cases?
We do, but right now with the COVID, we've been having some limitations with staffing. As you very well know, these are cases that cause for you to be dictate-oriented. So whether or not we can assist, it depends on the time frame and how much time you have for us to work with you. If it's something that you're short of time and we're not able to dedicate that time, I'm usually very upfront and say, you know what? No, we're not going to get into this, because of the staffing, some of the staffing issues we have too. Yeah. But one of the things I'll recommend is this. In my experience with immigrants, I've noticed, I don't know, I may be wrong and I want to believe I'm wrong. A lot of us don't read. We have all the degrees, all the certificates, all the this, all the that. But when I'm talking about reading for empowerment, reading to enlighten yourself, to broaden your understanding. Now, as an immigrant, when you come into a country that you know nothing of its rules, its laws, its immigration process, the first thing I expect you to do is be a reader. Read. The government immigration website is very rich. If only you can just make time, go through and read. Now, you made mention of something that finding attorneys that work in these areas. Now, that could connote a lot of things. Maybe you're talking about attorneys that don't handle it. Maybe you're talking about attorneys that maybe they say they handle it, but they don't do a good job, okay? Now, one thing you have to understand is if you go do your homework, you have some ideas. The first thing you want to do will be to consult with a professional, consult with an attorney. Now, depending on how the conversation goes, you yourself will be able to determine if this is clicking for you, if this is making sense at all. You see, the essence of you going to a professional is you're going to somebody who has a higher level of knowledge and understanding. They must be able to break it down to your level in such a way that makes sense to you. That way you know what you qualify for and what you don't qualify for. Do you understand me? So that's where I would recommend we all start from. If you're new to the US, please bookmark uscis.gov. That's just one of the government websites. What? www.uscis. You know that, yeah. It's a we all know that, but you know, we go there, we look up cases and all of that, but sometimes just type in whatever you're going through, whatever you want to know about. Just type it in, read. You may not understand everything. A lot of things may not make sense to you, but at least it gives you some background knowledge. That with that, you go to a professional, not from a position of total ignorance, but at least with some semblance of knowledge. That way, as you go through, you're making notes as to the questions you have, things you don't understand. The consultation with a professional becomes an opportunity for you to get answers, clarification, and a sense of direction. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, I know I have Isheoluwa. Am I within? I apologize if I've passed the time allotted. I do apologize.
No, you have time to. You have time till 3:25.
3:25 is already 3:37. So maybe I should wrap up.
Keep going.
Yeah.
We'll say keep going.
I was going to touch on that, but okay. Now, this is an application process wherein you're seeking protection from the United States government on grounds of past persecution or fear of future persecution. Now, this can be on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. Now what this means is, if you're going to file your application, the reason or the basis of your application must find roots in any of these classes, okay? But unfortunately, it seems everybody comes into the US and the first thing they think of is asylum. We show up at the point of entry, even if the only word you know, in most cases, is going to be asylum. But when it comes to the nitty-gritty, a lot of people don't meet the requirements for a successful asylum application. I've had situations where people say the economic situation in their home country is bad, they lost their job, they want an opportunity for a better life in the United States. Okay, everybody wants that, but does that fall into any of the grounds that supports asylum? In fact, I had somebody tell me one time, they already filed the asylum application. We were trying to do something else, but I just wanted some background understanding and knowledge about the asylum that was already filed. And what the person explained to me was COVID. I'm like, okay, COVID was that was what you explained as the basis of the asylum, that I lost my job, and because of COVID, I couldn't go back. Okay, so you already see the grounds. You see, this is why I say empower yourself. Empower yourself. There are things that you can, on your own, even just determine, oh, this will work, this will not work. Because you may go to certain places and they tell you no problem, we'll file it for you. And they don't have any problem filing it. But the question is, do you qualify? Now, one thing you have to understand about filing an immigration application is this. Filing is not it's no big deal. Anybody can file an application. The application can even be denied, no problem. But what you have to understand is, depending on the immigration application you file, that can be the quickest way to get yourself into deportation proceedings. So when you file that application, make sure it has merits. Now let's take a look at a few things before I give you an illustration. We have two types of asylum process. We have the affirmative, that's the one you file directly with the government. And then we have the defensive asylum application, that's the one you file with the immigration court when you've been placed in deportation. So you have to understand both. Now, for the asylum application, there is a 1-year deadline for you to apply upon your arrival into the United States. But however, there are exceptions to that 1-year deadline. So depending on the facts of your case, if you miss the 1-year deadline and you're eligible for the exceptions, you could still be eligible to file. For example, if you were sick and because of that ill health, maybe you were hospitalized, you couldn't meet that deadline. Or you retain the services of an attorney who didn't timely file, ineffective assistance of counsel. Okay? Or, any of the other grounds listed under the law. So understand that 1-year limitation. Now, when you file the asylum application and it's approved, all well and good. You get the asylum status, and after 1 year, you become eligible to file for the green card. And after you get your green card, you wait for the necessary time frame, you file for your naturalization, and you become a United States citizen. Now, what happens if it's not approved? So if you filed an affirmative asylum application with the government and it's denied, they're going to refer you to the immigration court for deportation. You're going to have an opportunity to see if you can make a case before the immigration judge. If you're successful, all well and good. But what if you're not successful? You become deportable. But you see, the sad side of that is that the sad part of it is this. There are people that could actually have a legitimate asylum claim, but they have no evidence to back it up. That's what makes asylum applications sometimes very difficult and frustrating. You hear people's story that even you're almost in tears. You're like, this is a very good case. But when you now start talking about the evidences, they have nothing. They have nothing in terms of backing the story up and showing it's a credible story. Okay? So if it's not approved and you have nothing to fall back on, and your life is really at risk with you going back home, then they're sending you back to what you're trying to escape from, unfortunately. Unfortunately. It's a sad mix. It's a sad place. Now, let's take a look here. This time, Becky. Do we have any Becky in the house? Okay. Now, Becky comes into the United States as a visitor. She files for political asylum after 6 months of being in the U.S. Remember, I said there's a 1-year deadline. So she meets the deadline. Okay? While the case is in process, she speaks to a professional only to realize, you know what? I don't really think, now that I understand this whole asylum thing, I don't really think I have a good case. I don't think I really will, I don't think I've really been able to meet the legal requirements. Now with this information, she understands that the possibility of her application being approved is not so great. Now she understands she needs to look for a plan B. Okay? Luckily, the asylum application is delayed. She meets this very handsome hunk of a man. I mean, she too, she's beautiful. Okay? They fall in love. And husband is like, I'm not letting you go. I mean, you're for keeps. Whatever we need to do. I'm an American citizen. You're my wife. I have a right to the pursuit of happiness through marriage. So they file for the green card. Husband files for the green card is approved. They go for the interview. Case is approved at the interview. Now, Becky uses that opportunity at the interview to withdraw her asylum application, being that her green card has been approved. What do you think of that? What do you think the asylum application did for her? Come again? Remember I said the case was approved, right? I told you the guy was a hunk of a man and she's a beauty too, you know? So basically it bought her time. It bought her time. That's the only thing it did for her. You see, because she had an understanding early in the process, she knew she had to work and look for a plan B, whether it's going to be, you know, through some other means and all of that. Now, what if she had come in illegally? Remember I said she came in as a visitor. So let's say Becky came in illegally. What difference would that have made? Hello? She can't file any case? You mean, because now we know she filed two, the asylum, the green card, right? Okay, so when you say she can't file any case, does that mean she can't file both the asylum and the green card?
I would say she can't file for a green card.
Okay, but she can file for asylum, correct? Yeah. Why can't she file for the green card?
Because she came in illegally.
Okay. So from what you're saying, one of the mandatory requirements to file for the green card in the US is you have to show proof of legal entry?
That's what I think. I may be wrong.
Okay, I would say you're correct. The reason she was able to adjust in the US and get the green card was because she came in legally at some point. When you're married to a United States citizen, the requirement is you must show you came in legally at some point, even if you overstayed. The fact that you overstayed will be waived. Why? Because you're married to an American citizen. That's the power of being married to an American citizen. Okay? Just being married to a citizen cures that defect. For every other person, depending on the facts, they could be disqualified. So the fact that you overstayed is not going to be a disqualification. But in this case, if she came in illegally, the ability to show that she qualifies, that she meets the legal entry requirement becomes a little bit more difficult unless she can show that she meets some of the exception to that rule, which in some situation it's not readily met by foreigners. So we understand the issue of asylum, the grounds upon which to file. Any question before I start to wrap up? Now, based on everything we've talked about so far, what are some of the things you can tell me should be avoided in your immigration pursuit and journey? Things to avoid with immigration. Okay, no lying, fraud, misrepresentation, okay. What about last minute filing? Rush work sometimes is not the best. Always start early, okay. Defective means of payment. How many of you have filed an immigration application? You send them the payment, but they said something was wrong with your payment. Instead of accepting the application and notifying you of the defective payment, so you send the money, they reject everything. And this is especially crucial if there's a deadline within which you have to submit that application. How soon the rejected application gets back to you, you really don't have any control over that. So when you're paying your immigration filing fee, make sure you're paying the correct fee, and make sure the way you're paying it will not be problematic. So if you have a credit, if you're paying with a credit card, you have to fill out the form. Make sure you don't have all kinds of fraud, alerts triggered on your card, wherein when they try to cash or pull out the money, your credit card company declines it because of some restrictions in place. Or maybe you don't sign the check. So those are things to avoid. Mailing your application to the wrong address. That's also another big issue to avoid. failure to show how you qualify for the application you're sorting. So if you're filing an application, it's your responsibility to show the government how you qualify for it in order to warrant an approval of your case. Now, do not assume the government should have this information or that information or that document. The government is not going to do your work for you. You're the one filing an immigration application. They expect you to give them all the necessary information, all the necessary documents. They're going to make a decision based on what you've submitted to them. So don't say, oh, I don't have, let's say your I-94, proof of lawful entry. Don't say I don't have a copy, but the government should have it. After all, they admitted me into the United States. They have a record of it. Yes, they do. But guess what? You file that application with that document, they will send you a request for evidence. You still don't provide it, they'll deny your case. So when you file an application, the burden of proof is on you to show how you've met all the legal requirements in order to warrant an approval. Also understand that the U.S. is a country of laws. It's sad, but sometimes where we come from, we've gotten so used to the lawlessness. You know, anything goes. You know, anything is possible. But you have to understand this is America. America is a country of immigrants, but first of all, it's a country of law. So when we come in here, we have to do our best to follow the law of the land. So keep that in mind. You have to educate yourself about the U.S. immigration system. You're new to the system, you have no clue. Yes, you may be ignorant, but understand ignorance is no excuse. This is the age of information. This is the age of, there's just so much information out there that we don't have. Yes, you may not understand it, but at least do your best to just go through them, see what you can glean, see what you can understand. At least you have an idea. Now, we have a lot of immigration scam, you know, people giving false hope, filing applications they shouldn't file, taking money from immigrants and all of that. Guess what? If you educate yourself and somebody is telling you you qualify for something, you know the right questions to ask. Okay, you're telling me I qualify for this. How do I qualify for it? You're telling me you can get me the green card for $10,000 is not a problem. But you see, if you've been reading and you know deep down you don't qualify, then you know the right questions to ask. You know the right questions to ask. I mean, I've read ABC and I know I'm supposed to have this, have that. I know I don't have it. So me paying you this money, how is it going to get me the green card? Protect yourself. I love what Pastor Michael said when he started off about the need for information and what having the right information can do for you. Apply that advice to immigration as well. Get professional help early. Now, I know professionals charge for their services, and sometimes when you're new to the system, all you're thinking about is how to survive, how to pay your bills, how to, you know, meet that need. That need could be here, it could be back home, because as far as your folks know, you are not in America. Now you have responsibilities at home too. Nobody really knows how you're coping here. So sometimes it's all about balancing whether to pay a professional or whether to pay your rent. True or false? Okay? It could mean the difference between whether you seek professional help or you send that money home to take care of a sick mom. When we come into this country, we work hard, but until you regularize your status, sometimes it's tough. Sometimes it's difficult. And sometimes desperation kicks in. Sometimes you're forced to do these things yourself. Which, if you can make the time to do the investigation, do the research, okay. But my recommendation is do your research, consult with an attorney, just so you have a sense of direction. Even if you don't have the money to eventually retain their services, but if you're going to do this yourself, do your homework, have a conversation with an attorney, ask your questions, get clarification, have a sense of direction, or seek pro bono help. Seek pro bono help. So let's be mindful of some of these points that we've shared here today. Have we been blessed today? Have we been blessed today? Good, good, good. Before I round up I can round up now, right? I can, okay. So once more, thank you very much for inviting me. I've not had the opportunity of looking around your beautiful city, but just the brief, ride around, it's a beautiful place. It looks very family friendly. It looks safe too. And it's very clean. A lot of potatoes. I've not eaten any of that. Hopefully I'll do that, okay? Hopefully I do. But I get those in Florida. And yes. No, what I buy in the store is Idaho potato. They're big. Yeah, that's, you can chop them up, use them in porridge, you can bake them, you can do all kinds of things with them. Yeah, that's what I normally get in the store. So you see, that was the attraction. It's a good thing I came. So you all keep up the good job. Many blessings on you all. For as many that are here believing God for whatever breakthrough, may God honor your faith. According to your faith, let it be done unto you in Jesus' name. So God bless the state of Idaho and all its representatives. God bless the United States of America. God bless Nigeria. And above all, God bless Africa. God bless Africa. God remember Africa, make room for Africa, and bless Africa. In Jesus' name, amen.
Oh, let's give it to them. I feel like we should do it more. Yeah. All right, so thank you very much for being with us, and we cherish this moment with you a lot. Trust me, this is so rich to us. And it has really opened our eyes to a lot of things in Boise, a lot of things in America. When before you come into America, the perception you have about America is different than when you enter. Because back there, before you enter, you think everything in America is so easy. It's just on a silver platter. You get it easy, and sometimes people even think there are money on the street. You can just, yeah. So this is so rich to us, and we are so blessed to have you around. And we learned a lot of things today. So I want to say thank you for coming, Lawyer Osas, and then Officer Jessica, and then Kate Nelson, who unfortunately left so early. We are so blessed to have you, and we learned a lot of things about the city of Boise. Boise is very friendly, and now at least we know there are opportunities around for talents and all that. And we've also learned today that the police is your friend, you know. Yeah, so, and it's not always the police, like you see police approaching you that you are at fault. But that's the first thing that comes to mind. The moment a police officer is coming near me, or I just feel like, wow, what is happening? But at least today we've learned a lot of things, and we know how to navigate. For instance, our brother Michael was afraid of that light, right? Yeah, so that's how it feels. And we also learned a lot about Boise State, opportunities in Boise State, funding for graduate and undergraduate students, and why you should choose Boise State. Yeah, so I think Boise State, like Idaho in general, is the best place to be in the US. Yeah, trust me or not, it's the best place to be. Yeah. So if you're watching us online, you are welcome to Idaho, and we would like to have you here. And if you are choosing any university, choose Boise State. Yeah. And yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we've learned a lot. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we are blessed for having you around. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So we have finally come to the end of this event. It's been an interesting journey from morning or afternoon till now. Yeah. And on behalf of PM, I want to thank everyone for your presence and for taking time to be here and attend this event today. And looking forward, we'll be making some adjustments to see if this event will also continue next year. And that's one of the reasons why we ask you to help us to fill these feedback forms. And please, if you haven't done that, kindly do so now. And if you have used one of these as your notes, you may request for a fresh one so that you don't lose the precious notes that you've written on it. Yeah, that being said, we also have, I don't want to say dinner, but we have lunch as well. And just so this is also in the back if you want a new one. And once you fill it out, please drop it on the table in the back as well. So we have food for everyone. Don't be in a rush to leave. And if you want to leave early, you can grab a plate or a bowl and be our guest and give feedback on how the food tastes. We have a variety of foods here. So thank you again, everyone, for attending. And please complete this form, and we'll be happy to hear your feedback. And thank you again, everyone. God bless. Just so sorry to cut you. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Travis, and also thank you, Attorney Yamo. Thank you, Pastor Mrs. Michael, and thank you, everyone. Yeah, bye. And if you'd like to consult with the attorney, this is the moment. Don't miss this wonderful opportunity. We can pick numbers, and she'll be happy to speak to everyone. If you don't already have a customized attorney, this is your opportunity. Do not miss it.